At a ball in the royal palace, two girls were discussing a guest who had come herself, and they did not understand why. She stood quietly on the sidelines, not communicating with anyone at all, and looked rather lonely. The girls continued to whisper that they were saying that Estefania had come to meet the greatest wizard. From the outside, it looks quite funny, because where did she get the idea that such a young man could even look in her direction? But at the sight of the modest girl, the young man immediately headed towards her and began to pull her cheek with his hand, after which he smiled sweetly and called the girl a little silly girl. This is a story about the beloved of a great wizard, but unfortunately her fate is already predetermined. Our heroine was walking along the corridor with a cup in her hands and heard her name begin to be called. When the call had already turned into a scream, why was she fiddling around there for so long? Let her move. The girl exclaimed that she was already coming. Entering the room, Estefania saw a crying girl in bed and a woman next to her who tried to calm her down and said that everything would be fine. There was no need to cry. Our heroine ran into the bedroom and said that she had brought Angelica hot milk with honey. The girl screamed capriciously that she didn't want to and knocked the cup out of her hands. Estefania did not expect that she would do this and stood in complete confusion. The woman immediately said that her daughter was not feeling well. There was no need to come here and annoy her. Our heroine quietly asked for forgiveness, but in response, she heard only a heavy sigh and displeased muttering that she should just clean up after herself and leave. Then the lady turned to her daughter and asked her to tell her mom what happened to her. The girl began to sob loudly and say that her stomach hurt very badly, and it was difficult to endure it. Her mother hugged her close and began to ask for forgiveness for the fact that it was because of her that she was born like this. Estefania looked at them sadly and said that she would go and prepare dinner. I thought to myself that if I told my mother that she remembered her past life, she would decide that the girl had gone crazy. No one would believe it, and they would decide that these were all fairy tales. The situation is that she was reincarnated as one of the characters in the novel The Beloved of a Powerful Wizard. The work tells about a girl with a very unhappy fate who met a magician, and he, with the help of his power, helped her regain her former greatness. The main character's name is Angelica Lana Bylist. That is her younger sister at the moment. It is very ironic to be reborn as her older sister, but she is definitely in the world of that work and clearly remembers its plot. Her family are descendants of a royal family from an eastern country called Isabel, but unfortunately they had to flee their homeland and settle in this house. Angelica lives in this place who has had health problems since childhood, and also her mother who suffers from overprotective syndrome and constantly blows dust off her. Our heroine also lives in this villa, but since they are refugees from another country, they have neither servants, nor power, nor means of livelihood. Although she has been living in this world for a long time, she can't remember what Estefania's role was in the plot of the work. Most likely, she was some kind of minor character whose fate was not revealed in the book, an unloved and forgotten eldest daughter who was always running errands. Every day, the girl regrets that God gave her a chance for a second life, because in this place, it's like hell on earth. In one of the taverns, a woman shouted that the order was ready and let Esh take it to the client. The boy immediately picked up the dish and said that he would do everything now. Having placed it on the table in front of the client, he apologized for the wait and added that the pork chop with vegetables was ready. The man thanked him and told him to bring him another glass of their delicious beer. The waiter immediately shouted to the bartender that their guest wanted to have another drink. In fact, it was Estefania, and since her family has absolutely no money, she had to work part-time in the evenings, and in order to hide her identity, she pretends to be a young man. This is a fairly popular place, so the pay is decent. She has to work every day, so she gets very tired, but at least in the tavern she can escape from reality, namely from the older child that no one needs. After a short period of time, the waiter brought what the client asked for. The man looked at her carefully and asked for forgiveness in advance for the question he would ask, but he looked somehow too pale. Was everything okay with him? Our heroine replied that it seemed to him that everything was fine with her, but the guest exclaimed how normal it was if he was very pale. And the young man saw his hands in general just skin and bones. How can one be so frail? Then he added that their doctor was resting here, so let him look at the boy. Another young man supported this idea and said that Esh works in this establishment every day, he just needs rest otherwise. At this rate, he could end up in the grave. The girl tried to calm them down and said that they shouldn't worry so much, everything was fine with her. Suddenly, our heroine was struck by a sharp coughing fit. Then she asked for forgiveness and said that she seemed to just have a little cold, but there was blood on her hand. Those present were completely horrified by this picture and shouted for the doctor to immediately examine this young man. The woman agreed with them and said that they should not be stubborn since it would be completely free. Everyone was tired of persuading her, so the doctor simply picked Estefania up in his arms to examine her. After the test, the girl said that she knows that she needs to rest more, but she doesn't have any pain at all, and everyone else is just exaggerating. The man looked very gloomy and replied that unfortunately he didn't think so at all, and was surprised that he was still standing at all. All symptoms indicate that he has Yuga disease, which is a very rare and incurable disease. The worst thing about it is that the whole body gradually stops functioning. Our heroine began to understand perfectly what he was talking about, as she remembered what was destined for the older sister in the work. The doctor upsetly asked for forgiveness, and said that no one had yet invented a cure for this disease. Unfortunately, a terrible, painful death awaits the young man, and nothing can be done about it. Our heroine understood why she didn't remember anything about the fate of Estefania, because in the work itself it was only mentioned. But the girl was still stunned and asked in a trembling voice how much she had left. The doctor replied that based on all the symptoms she had very little time. Estefania asked not to be secretive and to tell her the truth exactly how much was left. After a pause, the doctor replied that if she was lucky, she would be able to live for another 3 months. Her condition indicated the extreme stage of the disease, so death could occur earlier. As the man said earlier, there's no cure for this disease due to its rarity, and it has not even been invented yet, so he is unable to help him let him forgive. The girl exclaimed that he should raise his head. He shouldn't worry, everything will be fine with her. The doctor shouted that in what other order he could die soon. But when the man raised his head and saw our heroine, his facial expression changed. The girl smiled with all 32 teeth and said that everything would be fine, honestly. On the way home, Estefania thought that she was barely allowed to leave work, but finally, she could be alone. All her colleagues and those present in the tavern got drunk and began to mourn her imminent death. The girl could not even think that they would worry about her so much. The strange thing was that they knew absolutely nothing about her, but they were much more worried than her own family. Suddenly, she heard some noise not far from her in the bushes. There was clearly someone there. Some kids jumped out right in front of her, and when they saw her, they screamed in surprise. The boy's expression immediately changed to one of disdain, and he asked why she was hanging around there. Then he looked her up and down and stated that the stranger must be a servant. His companion grimaced disgustedly, covered her face with a handkerchief, and exclaimed what a wretched appearance. Plus, she also smelled of fumes. Then they began to talk loudly, saying that who would have thought that this trash lived in such a luxurious mansion? Our heroine was a little upset by this, since she did not deserve such treatment. Since they settled in that villa, the girl began to notice something strange. Some things began to simply disappear, for example, like an ancient cuckoo clock that hung on the wall. It seemed as if it had simply been stolen. Our heroine asked what dear gentlemen were doing at the gates of her house late at night. The boy exclaimed irritably that this had absolutely nothing to do with the commoner. Estefania did not want to get involved in a conflict, so she said that since this was the case, she would probably go, but suddenly they shouted to stand. It would seem that the seemingly sweet girl declared that if she told anyone that she saw them there, then my lady would personally take care of getting rid of her and the whole family. Our heroine did not answer this and simply moved on. Having opened the entrance doors, the girl said that she had already come home. Angelica, who was coming down the stairs, said irritably that she was late. Estefania replied that it was already late and asked why she was still awake. The younger one replied that she was suffering from illness, lying in this outback as if in a cage, and she dared to go to bars and have fun for her own joy. Our heroine exclaimed that she was not having fun, and her little sister misunderstood everything. The girl sighed heavily and asked why such a miserable existence does not bother her, namely to be born with these damned eyes. The reason they fled their homeland was because they and their sister had cursed eyes from birth, while all people from the royal family have blue eyes. No one knows why they were born. Was glad. Angelica said that she was very envious of her eldest, even if she was not born with blue eyes, but she was healthy and strong who could calmly go out whenever she wanted. And she is like a bird that was locked in a cage weak and forever suffering from this pain. Why was she lucky to be born healthy? But she is obliged to exist and not live. Our heroine looked at her and thought that her little sister was deeply mistaken. The main character of the work is Angelica, an exiled princess from an eastern country who lost her older sister due to an incurable disease. In the novel, after the death of Estefania, she changed a lot. The death of a relative influenced her worldview. And at the moment, they are approaching the very beginning of the story, where the eldest dies in agony. Their mother came out into the hallway, who noted that her daughter was still not sleeping, and said that it was getting cold in the house at night, so she had better go to bed. Ignoring her second daughter, the woman turned around and began to leave, but our heroine called out to her. Mom turned around and irritably asked what she wanted from her. When the girl said that she wanted to discuss something with her, the woman yawned and asked if it could wait until tomorrow morning since she was very tired. Estefania tried to object and say that she wanted to tell her something very important. The mother immediately hissed angrily that she would stop acting so selfishly and let her sleep. Our heroine was upset because of this treatment, but did not say anything more. Lying in her bed, Estefania thought that she still couldn't believe that she would soon go to the next world again. But it was inevitable. She is destined to die again in 3 months, but she would like to finally meet Mr. Shinel. Mighty wizard Shinel Crowley is her favorite character from this novel, as well as Angelica's future husband. She wanted to see him in person at least with one eye, not just read the description of his appearance, but see him, smell him, watch his facial expressions. Only by looking at the young man a little will she be able to rest forever. Then Estefania sat up abruptly and thought about what in fact was stopping her from meeting him, since she literally lives in the world of this novel. Since she is destined to die anyway, then she can at least fulfill her cherished desire. After which our heroine looked out the window at the full moon and whispered that she would definitely meet Mr. Shinel. The next day, when the girl came to the doctor, it dawned on him that she was Esh. The girl smiled and said that she came to thank him and say goodbye. The man asked where she was going to go so spontaneously. Our heroine replied that she would make her way to the Central Lands. The doctor was surprised at first, but then muttered that perhaps specialists live there who are developing a cure for Yuga disease. But in her condition, it is dangerous to go there. Estefania smiled sweetly and replied that there was no need to worry. This was her last and selfish wish before her imminent death. The man spread his hands and said that if she really wants it, then no one has the right to stop her. The girl noted that this was so, after which she bowed and thanked him for revealing the truth to her. When the young man replied that after all he was a doctor, and this was his duty, Estefania said that she was still very grateful to him. The doctor suggested that all the guys from the tavern would like to see her off anyway, whether she would come to them to say goodbye. Our heroine replied that she would also really like to see them, but unfortunately, it's already time for her. After which Estefania turned around and began to walk away since there was little time. The man called her by name Esh and said that he did not know if they would meet again, but he really asked her to fight for her life until the very end. The girl turned to him and said that her name was Estefania Lana Bylist. Let him remember it, please. Hearing her full name, it dawned on the doctor that she was a member of the royal family, which no one needed from birth. The irony of our heroine's life was that the current one was absolutely no different from the past. She still had the same sick younger sister and mother suffering from overprotective syndrome. There was also the older sister, who was obliged to work every day from morning to night in order to provide the youngest with expensive treatment. Living a second, exactly the same life, she had a strong feeling of déjà vu. Her previous existence ended due to constant overwork and severe overwork. This time, she was dying from an incurable disease. Why was she so unlucky that in this life and that life she was like in hell? The only difference is that at the moment there is him Shin E.L. Crowley, last time she died without ever knowing the joys of life and trying only for the sake of others. But this time, the girl wants to devote the rest of her days to the fulfillment of her own cherished desires. The thoughts were interrupted by the voice of the coachman, who said that they had already arrived at the place. Looking around, our heroine exclaimed that this is the homeland of magicians called Central Lands, and her favorite hero from the novel lives here. Estefania comes from the eastern kingdom Isabel, but besides the four kingdoms, there is another part. In ancient times, a great land of magicians and sorcerers appeared, and its name was Central Lands. The girl noted that since this is the homeland of all wizards by nature, they are very proud, arrogant, and do not like strangers, so there is no need to attract attention to themselves and act according to the original plan. Our heroine thought that the author was exaggerating that all the inhabitants of magical lands were so arrogant until she encountered one situation. Two guys were arguing with each other. One shouted that he had an appointment for today's appointment, and the second responded by saying that there was actually a queue. Estefania noted that they are very aggressive and ready to kill each other, so they need to run away, otherwise they might get hurt too. But before the girl had time to take a step, there was a blow to the wall right behind her. Our heroine just thought that thank God she had passed through when a voice was heard, asking if she was all right. Straightening up, she began to turn her head in different directions, but did not see anyone next to her. The voice said that it was a little lower. The girl immediately looked down and saw a little boy. The kid exclaimed that she must be Norma. It is very dangerous for her to be in this place, and it is better to leave. That's what they call people who don't know how to cast magic. She hasn't even had time to do anything yet, and the little one has already realized that Estefania doesn't have magic. The boy angrily exclaimed that everyone was already tired of these old farts. They were always quarreling over all sorts of nonsense. Our heroine stated that he must be local, and then asked if he knew how to stop them. They could destroy the city just like that. The boy replied that my lady should not worry, this would never happen as long as there was a master in the city. Suddenly, a powerful explosion occurred behind them, and the quarreling guys were carried away somewhere to the side. Holding the place of the bruise, one of the young men exclaimed what an impudent person dared to intrude into their conversation. Then he looked up and saw the master, after which he came to the conclusion that they would now come to an end. The young man hissed, how dare they disturb his peace? The guys immediately began to bow and say that they didn't want to disturb him because they just had a little quarrel. The guys really apologized, but the young man was adamant and decided to put them in their place with the help of his magical abilities. After a powerful explosion, the young people were left lying in a pile of stones in an unconscious state. The girl looked at him in admiration with tears in her eyes and whispered how incredible he was. She couldn't believe that she saw Mr. Shinel live. Then I saw that he was about to leave and realized that something urgently needed to be done. So she ran in his direction, shouting for him to wait a little because she needed to say something. The young man decided to respond to her request, so he stopped. Without wasting any time, Estefania, blushing, blurted out that she loved him with all her heart. The young man was taken aback by what he heard and asked again what she had just said. The girl immediately caught herself and thought that as soon as she saw his beautiful face, these words came out on their own. Mr. Shinel did not react to this in any way and simply instantly disappeared into thin air. Estefania turned to the boy and apologized for the fact that he had to see something so strange. But more importantly, she still did not thank him for saving her, after which she asked him what his name was. The kid replied that he was always happy to help and said that his name was Yuchi. Our heroine also introduced herself in response and said that her name is Estefania. Hearing her name, the boy asked if he could simply call her Fani. The girl replied that why not? The new acquaintance was very happy and solemnly exclaimed, "Hooray!" Our heroine noted that there was so much joy in his voice, although it seemed to be such nonsense, so she even envied him a little. Then the boy said that she must have arrived in the Central Lands for the sake of a magical request. The girl replied that he is very smart. And that's exactly how it is. In this world, there were two types of people, the norms who did not know how to conjure, and magicians. At one time, the norms were afraid of the greatness of wizards, which is why the latter came up with a special service. These are magical requests. pleas for help from any part of the continent come to this place, magicians in turn undertake to fulfill any request of the person in need. Fani wanted to use this for the sake of meeting Shinel. The boy exclaimed that then he was ready to fulfill her request, although you couldn't tell from him, but he was quite a powerful magician. Our heroine asked for forgiveness and said that she had arrived in these parts specifically to ask for help personally from Mr. Crowley. Yuchi looked at her in surprise and said that if she wants something from the master, then she won't succeed. When Estefania asked why, the boy replied that, in truth, there was no guarantee that Shinel would personally answer her request. First, the special services study the request, they determine the complexity of the task, and then appoint a magician. The master deals only with extremely difficult cases. The girl was immediately upset, but the boy added that he could listen to her, and depending on the question he would answer whether Crowley would take on her. But our heroine was already lost in her thoughts, and thought that nothing would come of it. She did not know that such a policy existed in the Central Lands. Her plan to meet with the master failed in a matter of seconds. Looking at the sad Fani, Yuchi asked if she wanted to marry the master. The girl was taken aback by such a question and was at a loss as to how to answer him. The kid said that she simply confessed her feelings to him, and that's why he made such a conclusion. Estefania immediately began to say that he understood everything wrong, and she didn't want to marry him. She was just a fan, and nothing more. The boy asked for forgiveness for such a ridiculous assumption, because ladies often come to them with such a request. The girl thought that it was really written in the novel that many dreamed of marrying him. But does she want this? Yuchi added that if my lady just wants to meet him, then he can help her with this. Our heroine was very surprised and asked how the baby could arrange this. The boy said that he could do everything, although it was impossible, and let everything else remain a secret. After which the child snapped his fingers and declared that right now they were going to meet the master. A broom immediately appeared under his feet, and he told his new friend to sit down, just let her hold on tight. After that, they took off into the air and went to Mr. Shinel. After some time, standing in front of the gloomy young man, our heroine thought that of course she dreamed of meeting him, but not in such an atmosphere. The boy simply pushed her into the throne room and immediately ran away. The wizard was tired of this prolonged silence, so he told the guest to finally start talking. Fani thought to herself that there would be no other option. She was already standing next to him, so first she thanked him for the fact that despite his busyness, the guy was able to devote time to her. She would like to ask him as a magician to allow her to stay in this castle for 2 months. The young man looked at her and asked if the girl knew that this joke could cost her her life. Our heroine understood that this was true if she was careless in her words. He could really kill her. Such a person is Shinel Crowley. She, of course, does not mind dying at his hands, considering that, in any case, her days are numbered. But since Fani has come this far, she does not intend to back down. So she said out loud that she was not joking, then stated that her name is Estefania Lana Bailest, is the crown princess of the Eastern Kingdom, and she was not born with blue eyes, which are considered to belong to the imperial family. The girl was expelled from her homeland, but despite this royal blood still flows in her veins here in his country, she is not afraid of the laws of the East. The Central Lands is a kingdom where the laws of others do not apply, and everyone has the right to receive protection and support here, even if the king, her father, finds out where she is. He cannot do anything to her. The girl understands that she cannot enjoy his hospitality forever, so she wants to go to another continent. But unfortunately, at the moment, she does not have the money and documents to sail away, so she asks for asylum. In a few months, she will earn enough to leave. It didn't even sound like a lie, but the young man asked, so what? One can assume that she really is a princess, but what is the use of keeping her in the country? Our heroine understood that not a single magician would fulfill a request without any benefit for himself. She needed to offer something valuable in return. Then he would not be able to refuse her. Therefore, our heroine exclaimed that she would now explain everything to him. The power of magicians increases depending on the phase of the moon. At the moment of the full moon, they rise to the peak of their powers, and only Mr. Shinel hates this day. The full moon helps bring the power of wizards to a whole new level, but the young man's powers go out of control, and bring him incredible pain and suffering. Only Estefania knew about this since she read the work. The guy must already be feeling bad because the full moon will come soon. So the girl handed him some medicine and said it should help relieve his pain. The young man only moved his finger a little, and the medicine was immediately in his hands, which he immediately began to test. Our heroine immediately said that there was no poison there, but if he didn't believe her, then she could drink it in front of him. After these words, the young man immediately opened the bottle and began to drink. Fani remembered the recipe for this medicine as it was described in the work, along with step-by-step preparation instructions. She really hoped that it would work. After a short period of time, the guy noted that he really felt better. While the girl was happy that it worked, the guy asked how long the effect would last. Estefania replied that it will not last long, so she advises taking it on the night of the full moon. The wizard's next question was where she learned the recipe for this drug. Our heroine replied that a magician she knew taught her this. When the young man asked who exactly, Fani replied that she could not say if she gave out his name. Then he would no longer need to fulfill her request. But she thought to herself that this person was himself, or rather Crowley's character in the novel. There was one scene when during the full moon Shinel was in pain, and the main character tried in every possible way to ease his suffering. She feels bad about having to use knowledge from the original story, but she doesn't think her actions will have a significant impact on the plot. The girl will still face inevitable death, and the gentleman will live a happy life with Angelica. Suddenly, the guy knocked her to the ground and put a knife to her chest, after which he said that she was brave enough for an ordinary woman. So it was time to honestly admit everything. Our heroine asked in surprise what he was talking about. Crowley said that today in the city, she confessed her love for him, didn't she? Fani thought to herself that the magician was not interested in women and relationships, so she believed that she would not give importance to her words, but he remembered them all this time. The guy continued that it was very convenient. She found a potion that would cure his illness and asks to live with him under the same roof. Has she really decided to seduce him like all other women? The wizard sees through such people. She is not interested in his personality, and any feelings all she needs is only the status of the wife of a great magician. Our heroine was upset that he thought that way and whispered that the guy was mistaken, after which she lost her temper and screamed that she didn't know about other girls, but she really liked him. A young man has every right not to love, but she will not allow her to say that her feelings are not real. Estefania thought to herself that she fell in love with him. Even then, her life was full of difficulties, failures, and unhappiness. And only Shinel was an outlet for her. When it was difficult or sad, she always reread her favorite passages with him. Then the girl exclaimed that she had no plans to become his wife. She really likes the guy, but she will leave the continent in a couple of months and does not intend to change anything. The wizard immediately hid the dagger and simply sat down next to her, after which he looked at her carefully and asked if the girl really loved him. Our heroine involuntarily had a smile on her face. She blushed all over and replied that she loved her very much. The young man replied that in this case he agreed to fulfill her request. Estefania immediately said that she would live in this country lower than the grass and quieter than water and would never bother him. But still, I decided to ask the gentleman why he asked a question about her feelings for him. The young man replied that he was simply once again convinced of one thing, that she was ideal for the role of his bride. The girl began to feel like she was losing touch with the outside world, but the guy asked if she was listening to him at all. Our heroine replied that yes, she just doesn't understand what he's talking about. The young man repeated once again that she is the ideal bride for him. Fani could not believe her ears, because this means that he wants to marry her. But why? Because in the original work, Shinel loved only Angelica. The young man immediately added that let her not misunderstand him. He was already tired of meeting every month with women who want to marry him, so he thought it would be nice to marry her. It dawned on our heroine that he meant a fictitious marriage. Crowley still doesn't need anyone's love. Due to his status as a great magician, he gained power in the Central Lands. The guy is considered the most powerful ruler among all the kingdoms. In other words, if you win his heart, you can become the wife of the most powerful man on the continent. Therefore, he began to suspect her because every woman wants to be his bride because of status. It's not that Fani is against a fictitious marriage, but in 3 months she will die, and in 2 months she must leave the Central Land. Therefore, I decided to clarify whether everything suits him, because in a couple of months she will leave their union will be short-lived. Plus, they will not be able to avoid rumors if they get married so quickly. The young man replied that this does not bother him at all. If you make him your bride, her stay in this place will not seem suspicious. In addition to Mr. Shinel, a large number of other magicians live in the castle. If Norma suddenly starts living there, it will attract a lot of unnecessary attention. But if she is in the role of Crowley's bride, she will be able to avoid sidelong glances in her direction. Therefore, after thinking a little, Estefania exclaimed that she agreed. The great magician looked at her and said that now they had agreed. The girl began to think what she should do next. Probably she should behave somehow appropriately. The young man replied that this is not at all necessary. First, a bodyguard should be assigned to her. She can contact him with all questions. Then the young man said to someone, "Come in," and a guy immediately appeared at the door. Our heroine looked over Shinel's shoulder to see who was there, and wondered what kind of character this was. When he saw the girl, the stranger exclaimed that now everything was clear to him. A crazy fan had once again infiltrated the master. Let the master give him just 1 second, and he will get rid of it. But when Crowley said that this was his bride, the young man froze in place in surprise. From this day on, the safety of his beloved will be the guy's main task. After which he quickly disappeared, not allowing the bodyguard to ask him some questions that arose. Our heroine noted that he disappeared without really explaining anything. This is quite in his style. The young man muttered that, of course, he didn't understand anything, but since the master said it, then it's good. The girl immediately introduced herself to him and said that she was glad to meet you. The young man said that his name is Elliot, and he is the master's right hand. Estefania looked at him in surprise and thought that she didn't remember that there was such a character in the book. Noticing that the girl was silently staring at him, the guy asked if she had really been captivated by his incredible beauty. Although the young man can understand her perfectly, it is for this reason that the master took him into his service as a ward. He is so beautiful that he himself is embarrassed. This is his gift and curse. What can you do if the guy was born so ideal and beautiful? Fani thought to herself that he is quite a peculiar person. Then Elliot grabbed her hands and said that she couldn't even imagine how hard it was for him to live with such a beautiful face. Listening to all this nonsense, the girl noted that she had some kind of bad feeling. A couple of hours later, the guy continued to broadcast and said that there is no need to quarrel over him how hard it is to live when he attracts so much attention to himself. Estefania could no longer stand it and said that she believed that talking about his beauty was quite enough for today. Even night has already come in the yard. From today, she will live in this castle, and she would like to rest a little. The young man immediately came to his senses and asked her for forgiveness, adding that they had completely started talking, so they needed to take her to her chambers. On the way, the girl noted that it was impossible to shut him up, but now the guy was so quiet. Suddenly, Elliot said that he is considered one of the most beautiful people in the whole world. But does she know who is truly perfect? It is Mr. Shinel Crowley. And it's not at all about an ideal face or magic. He is beautiful like a lonely rose in a garden that no one dares to touch. Then he turned to her and added that he loves beautiful things very much, but hates it when someone tries to dishonor their beauty. And the word bride discredits the beautiful image of their master. Then the guy laughed loudly and asked, why make such an expression on his face? He knows very well that their status is fake, although he has no idea why the gentleman needed a fictitious bride. After which he looked at her carefully and asked whether this was all a lie. The girl exclaimed that yes, due to circumstances she needs to live in this place for some time, but apart from status, nothing connects them. The young man replied that this may be true now, but in the future they may begin to be connected not only by fiction. The master is a very charming young man. It's no wonder that she falls in love with him. Suddenly, she wants to become his lover, Fani. After all, she herself cannot know what her feelings for him will be. Our heroine felt uneasy and she tried to collect her thoughts in order to answer something. But Elliot interrupted her and said that the master would never love her, let him remember this. Then he took her into the room and said that no one had lived there for a long time, so it might be a little dusty. The girl was stunned by the state of the room and could not even breathe normally. The young man smiled sweetly and said that nothing can be done about it. Shinel ordered to find her a room, but this is the only free bedroom in the castle. Estefania replied that she understood everything and added that he also assigned a bodyguard to her. Although he was not obliged, she was very grateful to him for that. I thought to myself that it would still be nice to clean this room. Finally, the guy said that he did not advise her to leave the room without his accompaniment. Otherwise, something terrible could happen to her. Our heroine asked in surprise what he was talking about. But the young man did not answer anything, wished her sweet dreams, and walked away. Taking off the dusty sheets, the girl thought that compared to life in a mansion with her mother and younger sister, this was still like paradise. Then she lay down in her bed and noted that this day had dragged on for a very long time. But it was fun. Estefania couldn't even think that on the very first day she would meet her favorite hero. Apparently, luck was on her side. Plus, she was able to see his smile, which is simply amazing. Apart from Elliot, that day was good. Fani could not even dream that she would meet Crowley being still alive in her right mind, and positive events have a good effect on her mental and physical state. Mom must be shocked that her daughter left, but if she had said goodbye to her in person, she would never have let her go. Now, Fani only began to live up to the words of her mother, which she had been repeating all her life about her selfishness. 3 days earlier, a woman approached her and said that she would like to discuss something because very soon there would be a birthday. The girl completely forgot about him. Her 16th birthday will be in 2 months, just before her death. Angelica decided that she wanted revenge on the royal family for making her older sister and mother suffer. She made this decision on the very day when her loved one went to the next world forever. 16 years in this world is the age of majority. It is very ironic that she will not even live to see it. Angelica's birthday this year should be celebrated in a special way because the girl will become an adult. Our heroine was disappointed because she thought that the woman wanted to discuss her holiday. Not paying attention to her facial expression, the mother continued that she needed her daughter's help because she wanted to buy a dress that the youngest wanted so much. Having interrupted her, Estefania immediately replied that she had to refuse the woman, always thinks only about her, and now about the gift, so let her buy it herself. To herself, she thought that in any case, she would not be there on her sister's birthday, so the girl saw no point in helping. The mother objected that this was such a special day for her little sister. Didn't she really want to please her? Our heroine shouted that in fact this was her special day. They were already pampering Angelica in every possible way, but this was already going beyond all limits of reason. The woman immediately burst out that she was the older sister, and therefore she was obliged to care for and cherish her little sister. Doesn't she understand that the girl was born sick and helpless, and Estefania, unlike her, is not constrained by illness and can do whatever she wants? Is it really so difficult to please her on this special day without always thinking only about herself? Mom was never on her side, so our heroine decided that she would silently leave the house. She asked out loud that if she were her youngest daughter, then her mother would work so hard for her happiness. The woman asked why such questions, and when the girl answered that it was just like that, she exclaimed that this was some kind of nonsense, and she was tired of arguing with her. After which, Mom turned around and simply walked away, thus evading the answer. Then the girl sat up on her bed and noted that she was very thirsty. But suddenly she saw someone's huge red eyes in the window and was very scared. Estefania became so scared that she froze in a daze and could not squeeze out words. Sitting on the floor, she immediately remembered Elliot's words, that he did not advise her to leave the room without his accompaniment, since something terrible could happen to her. Was this exactly what the young man warned her about? In the morning, having heard about the red eyes in the window, the guy replied that he had no idea what it could be. Let him understand correctly, in this castle, you can meet anything you like. Spirits, fairies, demons. It may be that some young sorcerer summoned a familiar and could not cope with him. In general, the full moon is approaching, and the magic in all wizards' heads is increasing every day. Fani replied that he said that if she just left the room without his knowledge, she would immediately be in danger. But how did he know that if she stayed in this bedroom, everything would be okay with her? The young man said that in the Central Lands, there is not a single corner that my lady could consider safe for herself. Then the young man added that if there are no more questions, then let him take his breakfast. Looking at the bread and water, the girl said that of course she understood that she had arrived suddenly, and they weren't expecting food for her. But was that really all? Elliot looked at her angrily and replied that that was all. Maybe something didn't suit her. Our heroine was confused by such treatment and could not object. Therefore, the young man exclaimed that it was great, after which he pointed his finger to the side and added that if she needed to wash clothes, then the bathroom was there, after which he began to walk towards the door. But Estefania called out to him and asked if she could meet Mr. Shinel. The guy replied that the master left the castle because of an urgent assignment and would arrive only in a week. The girl noted to herself that it would be right on the full moon, and he would need a new portion of the medicine, so it was necessary to prepare. After which she smiled sweetly and thanked the bodyguard for the information provided. At that moment, Estefania did not even suspect what suffering Elliot had in store for her. 5 days later, our heroine lay in her bed and thought that she was simply incredibly hungry. During this time, Elliot did everything possible to make her want to escape from the castle on her own. She saw him only once a day when he brought breakfast, and it was always just water and bread. To the great regret of the guy and herself, Estefania has nowhere to return, but being there is really very difficult mentally since she eats only once a day, and little she has absolutely no strength left. Our heroine can even just move around the room with great difficulty. Fani cannot sleep peacefully at night because she is again afraid of seeing a pair of red eyes outside the window. She is constantly incredibly chilled. If this continues, she will die of hunger rather than of illness. This is simply unbearable if she stays in the bedroom for even one more day. She may simply not wake up in the morning. The girl walked along the corridor and thought that she needed to find Yuchi. Stopping near the balcony, our heroine noticed some people in the distance. Estefania found out that one of them was none other than Magdalena Lively. The girl is the main antagonist in the original work who is head over heels in love with Shinel. It was she who constantly prevented Angelica from getting closer to him in any way. Magdalena irritated many readers with her stubbornness. People left comments that she was incredibly annoying to them. Let her admit defeat, Crowley would never be with her. It's surprising that the magician didn't send her to hell, because how can someone like that be tolerated? In the novel, the guy tried in every possible way to avoid her. Did he really decide to take her as his wife only so that Lively would unhook from him? Most likely this is exactly the case. But if Fani becomes the bride of Shinel, then she may be in danger in the person of a villainess who has gone crazy. If a girl sees her right now, then this will obviously not end well. Therefore, I decided that it was better to quickly return to the room before the antagonist saw her. When our heroine entered the bedroom, a severe coughing attack began to choke her again. After this, seeing blood on her hand, the girl noted that it appeared again. Then Estefania became very ill and simply lost consciousness. Meanwhile, an irritated Elliot walked along the corridor and thought about how she infuriates him. The young man thought that the girl would run away on the first night. As soon as this girl appeared in the castle, the guy immediately began to follow her. But because of the magic that the master cast on his office, he cannot hear what they are talking about. And then, having heard the master's wishes, he realized that the master wanted to get rid of her. Actually, he lied to the silly girl a little, since Shinel's right hand is a little brat. But it won't last long. Once the guy makes her leave, Crowley will see his potential. Elliot found out that the girl was a crown princess from an eastern country, and that must be why the master did not take her out of the castle with such rude methods, but wanted the girl to leave of her own free will. Then the young man approached the gentleman's office and shouted that he had already arrived. A security seal immediately lit up under the door, and this meant that you could enter. As soon as he entered, he immediately began to say that everything was exactly as the master wanted. That girl was already on the verge of leaving the castle because Elliot had personally taken up this issue. The guy was more than sure that he understood his wishes correctly, thought that he would praise him for this, and promote him in his position. But why right now? The young man tries to strangle him. Having already begun to lose consciousness, the young man croaked for the master to spare him, and for him to loosen his grip. After which, Mr. Shinel hissed intimidatingly where Fani is currently located. The guy exclaimed that why did he need this Crowley himself, instructed him to get rid of her so he could handle it on his own. But the greatest magician silently, with all his might, kneed him in the gut. And so much so that Elliot simply flew to the side like a rag doll, after which the guy shouted that he did not understand at all the reason for his anger, why he was so angry, because the young man did everything that the master himself wished. The young man hissed that he asked him to take care of the bride and not vice versa. Elliot shouted that about what other bride he understands that that girl is a princess from the Eastern Kingdom, and the master could not throw her away so easily, so he asked to deal with her. Was Elliot mistaken? Shinel wanted to die from her like from all other women, so what did he do to deserve such anger? At that very second, the master, with the help of his magical abilities, tore off the hand of the self-confident young man. Estefania is currently located. The guy stuttered and replied that he was in the room at the end of the eastern corridor. After Crowley heard the information he needed, he instantly disappeared. Elliot was left at a loss, thinking that he had really made a mistake. And that girl was dear to the master from the very beginning. When Crowley materialized in our heroine's bedroom, he saw that she was lying completely exhausted, after which he immediately took her in his arms and moved to some other place. When after some time the girl came to her senses, she looked around and could not understand where she was at the moment. Estefania had never been to this place before, and clearly remembers falling asleep in her room. When she returned to her bedroom, she passed out from hunger and woke up on the floor a couple of hours later. Then our heroine washed her hands from the blood that appeared during the cough. The last thing the girl remembers is that she felt exhausted on the bed and fell asleep, but after that she never woke up. Therefore, how did Fani even end up in these luxurious chambers? Yuchi suddenly appeared and immediately rushed to hug our heroine. The boy cried and asked her to forgive him for his sinner. The girl stroked his head and asked what happened. He is very sorry that he did not keep track of her, and Estefania had to face this damned narcissist. Then he sharply pulled away from her and said that she must have been very tired, and he leaned on her with his whole body, after which he asked how Fani was feeling because the girl had been sleeping for so long. Our heroine replied that everything was fine. She was just very tired and nothing more. The kid exclaimed, which means nothing more. She was forced to live in a dirty closet for a whole week, was hardly fed, and was not allowed out of the room. This is absolutely no joke. Estefania asked in surprise how he knew all this. The boy replied that the master told him everything. The master began by saying that she had now become his bride, and then he told him about all this. Yuchi told her that he was the one who was supposed to look after her, but he was urgently called to the city by request, and Shinel was forced to entrust the guard to Elliot. However, no one could have imagined that the young man would keep her in such terrible conditions, and Mr. Crowley severely punished him for this. The girl thought to herself that now everything became clear, and at least she was very glad that now the boy would look after her, and then asked if he had moved her to this bedroom. The kid wanted to start explaining everything to her, but suddenly a gentleman appeared. So he turned to him and exclaimed joyfully that Estefania had finally come to her senses. Then I realized that it would probably interfere a little, so I said that he would go and bring breakfast and let them keep it secret for now. Fani immediately said that Yuchi told her everything. Apparently he personally arranged for this room, but the one that Elliot provided her was enough, so don't let her scold him. Then she apologized for making everyone worry and said that she had prepared medicine for him. But when the girl suddenly stood up and said that she was going to her room now and would bring it, she suddenly felt bad and became very dizzy. To prevent her from falling to the floor, the young man managed to catch her. Hearing the wonderful aroma emanating from it, our heroine wondered what kind of wonderful smell it was. Perfume or laundry conditioner, she had never heard anything like it, and nothing compares to it. Then she suddenly came to her senses and thought about what she was doing and exclaimed that she was asking for forgiveness. She didn't want to touch him on purpose. This won't happen again. But the guy pushed her sharply so that she lay back in bed. The girl began to get back up and lament that what about his medicine? The gentleman covered her mouth with his hand and asked if she could be silent for at least a little. After which he sat down next to her and asked what she thought who she was, how a girl could allow some servant to treat her so rudely. Fani objected that Elliot brought her food and water every day, too. She feels so bad, not because of his actions. It's just that her health is failing. When the young man addressed her by name, our heroine noted that he had done this for the first time. In the original story, the guy never called people by name. He had no use for it. He just didn't remember the names of the people around him. But he remembered the name only once when he met Angelica and was amazed at her beauty. Suddenly, Shinel hissed that this is simply disgusting, her politeness and self-destruction are incredibly annoying what she is trying to achieve with such an attitude towards herself. The girl began to mutter something incomprehensible and ask for forgiveness. Crowley shouted that he was her fiancé and let Fani communicate with him as an equal. Let him raise his head and speak clearly. Otherwise, he would not be able to understand her feelings. She is used to always putting herself lower than others for the sake of her own safety, but she doesn't have to do this with him. Our heroine thought to herself that she fell in love with the gentleman because he had always been a very kind person. Then he tucked her hair behind her ear and said that she should remember that she must always talk to him, no matter what happens, whether she feels bad, sad, or happy, whether she likes something or not, because Estefania is his bride. Suddenly, a boy rushed into the bedroom saying that he had brought breakfast and found this awkward picture. Yuchi immediately began to say that apparently he had interrupted and would come back a little later, but the girl tried to stop him. After some time, the baby was already spoon-feeding her porridge. Our heroine exclaimed that she couldn't eat that much. The boy looked at her with puppy dog eyes and said that, after all, he tried so hard and prepared this breakfast. Doesn't she like it? Estefania noted to herself that his charm simply blinded her eyes. But how can she eat calmly if the master literally burns her with his gaze? Yuchi guessed about this and said that the master was embarrassing her, so let her leave. After these words, the young man immediately disappeared from the room. Our heroine was indignant at what he just did, but the kid told her not to be nervous and to eat. When the girl finished eating, the boy asked if she knew why he could not cure her fatigue with magic. Estefania replied that she needed to think a little, but began to think to herself that it seems the novel described the reason for this, but she did not remember something at all. Yuchi exclaimed that in that case he would now explain everything to her, and they would start from the basics. The body of every person contains magical power. In their world, people whose amount of magic exceeds permissible limits are called wizards. For every person, the amount of magic is an innate trait, like, for example, the color of a baby's eyes. So from a very early age, it is possible to determine whether a child will become a magician. But now the time has come for sudden questions. If the baby was born with a magical norm, what is the likelihood that, as he grows up, he will become a magician? Our heroine thought a little and answered that 30%. The kid replied that no, there is absolutely no chance a magical norm is not capable of becoming a wizard. Never. Norma will never be able to become a magician. Even no full moon will help them. And if they try to artificially increase their magical power, then there is a high risk of death. And when using healing magic, the wizard directs his magical power into another person. Fani continued that if the volume of this power in the patient is lower than that of the wizard, then he will be in danger of death. Therefore, normally, no types of magic can be used. The boy exclaimed that she was smart and understood everything perfectly. Our heroine replied that this is all because he is just a wonderful teacher. If before arriving in the Central Lands, she clearly knew that no magic could heal her, then she no longer hoped to be cured of her illness. All she wanted was to meet Mr. Shinel. After which, the girl asked why Yuchi started this conversation at all. The boy replied that when he was in her room, he noticed something. There was a bucket of water in the corner, and all the liquid was blood red. With the help of magical analysis, the baby realized that it was her blood. Our heroine is clearly trying hard to hide something from them all. She's not wounded, So where did the blood come from? Estefania thought to herself that she couldn't tell the truth about her illness, so she would have to lie. Therefore, she answered that she did not want to tell, but from the feeling of hunger, she became so dizzy that she fell and slightly injured the back of her head. The girl immediately began to bleed, so Fani cleaned everything up and washed her hair. The boy exclaimed in horror that how did she hurt her head? Let him examine it. Our heroine immediately said that the wound had already healed, and there was no need to worry so much. Yuchi shouted that how could he calm down now if he found out that she had an abrasion on her head. The girl noted to herself that she seemed to have made it even worse, but said out loud that everything was fine. Nothing hurt, so don't worry. The kid replied that if this is really the case, then okay. As he said earlier, they wizards cannot heal the wounds of magical norms. Therefore, he asks her very much if something hurts, then let her talk about it right away. Yuchi will make sure that she is examined by a good doctor. Our heroine said that she would like to ask him something, why he was so kind to her from the very first time they met. The boy replied that it was because Fani is very inspiring. Estefania asked, in what sense, because she did nothing of the sort. After that, the baby simply looked at her silently with the kindest smile she had ever seen. Our heroine never found out what he meant, but for some reason this smile suddenly made her soul feel so warm and calm. After some time, Yuchi brought her a gorgeous dress and exclaimed that she needed new clothes. There is a charm placed on it, so its size can be adjusted to the person who is wearing it if she wants to try it on. The girl noted that it was very beautiful and asked whether she could really take it. The baby replied that of course it was specially sewn for her. Fani asked if it was the boy who sewed it, but he replied that no, there was a sorceress in their castle who sewed clothes for everyone. Our heroine was surprised because she did not know that such a type of magic existed. Then she became a little embarrassed and asked me to convey her gratitude to that girl. Yuchi added that, by the way, it was the master who instructed the sorceress to create this shirt, and it was also he who brought it to these chambers. The girl was taken aback by the information she heard and clarified that it was really he who found her in the room. The kid replied that the gentleman personally interrogated Elliot and forced him to tell where she was, and then immediately went to her bedroom since he could not allow his beloved bride to get hurt. Estefania replied that the word beloved is a little different. She and Shinel have a completely different relationship. The boy asked in surprise that don't they love each other. Our heroine said that before drawing any conclusions, let him tell her how the master introduced her. The kid replied that he didn't really say anything. He just said that from that day on she was his bride, and that now Yuchi must take care of her. The girl noted to herself that Crowley again did not explain anything to his subordinates, but this is absolutely unimportant. They all misunderstand their relationship, how after a few months she will leave the master if the young man does not initiate them into all the details. She just needs to talk about it with the baby. Our heroine decided that she would try to explain everything to him while there was such an opportunity. But unexpectedly, with the help of magical abilities, the boy dressed her in the dress he brought, after which he said that this is all, of course, very interesting, but they will discuss everything in detail when she finally recovers. When he was about to leave, the girl grabbed him by the cloak and said, "Wait." Yuchi asked what was wrong. Maybe something was wrong. Estefania thought to herself that even though she was placed in a better room, she was still afraid of being alone, so she tried to find the words to explain everything correctly. But the boy himself asked if she was worried about those red eyes that she saw in the window. Fani replied that although she saw them only once at night, she still couldn't get that image out of her head, so she couldn't sleep peacefully. When the baby thoughtfully replied that he understood everything the girl asked if he knew who it could be, Yuchi replied that he knew who it was, however, in order to meet him. It was necessary to wait until nightfall. And at the moment, our heroine needs to sleep and gain strength. After he touched her with his finger, the girl instantly fell asleep. Finally, the baby told her to sleep peacefully. Let her have the warmest dreams. When the girl opened her eyes late at night, she saw a gentleman sitting on the edge of her bed. Noting that she had already woken up, the young man picked her up in his arms and said that it was time to get up. Then the young man and her simply flew out the window and hovered in the air. After he told her to look down, our heroine saw a whole group of magicians. There, she saw a huge animal that looked like a snow-white fox with red eyes. Shinel said that the boy told him that she met him at the castle. It was a familiar, some wizards call it for themselves. It helps them in battle and everyday life. Estefania noted that it is now clear who she saw at night, and he turned out to be not so scary. As soon as the young man showed her what she was so afraid of, the fear immediately went away. The kid must have asked him to help overcome it. Our heroine leaned close to the young man's face and thanked him for showing her this. Then Estefania caught herself and thought that she had just touched Shinel's lips with her lips, after which she immediately began to ask for forgiveness and say that she didn't mean to. She was very sorry. Our heroine only now realized how close they are to each other. She wanted to say that it was time for them to go down, but she saw from his expression that the young man was in great pain, but it was not because of her. The girl completely forgot that today is the full moon, and this is the day that Mr. Crowley hates. They immediately moved to the bedroom, and our heroine realized that this was his room. The young man felt very bad and was overcome by convulsions. Fani realized that it was because the moonlight fell on him that the mana in the master's body began to get out of control, and it was all because of her. Our heroine was so scared, and to dispel her fear, the kid asked the gentleman to show her that familiar. Our heroine realized that it was urgent to bring him the medicine that she had prepared. Suddenly, the young man grabbed her by the dress, trying to stop her in this way. Fani said that she needs to bring him medicine. It won't take much time, let him let her go because she wants to help. But the young man simply snapped his fingers, and her suitcase appeared in the bedroom. Estefania immediately ran to him and began to look for what was needed, after which she quickly gave the young man a drink of this medicine to make him feel better. But Crowley was not even able to take a sip, and everything spilled past his mouth. The girl prepared this potion for only 2 months. If the master does not take it now, he will lie the whole night in agony. Our heroine must do something because she cannot allow him to suffer. She wanted to pour medicine from mouth to mouth, but she doesn't think that this will help open his jaw what to do in this situation. At the door, Fani saw a boy who, smiling sarcastically, said that he had seen everything. Estefania immediately exclaimed that he had completely misunderstood everything, and she was not going to do anything. Yuchi said that the lovers wanted to be alone at night under the full moon, and that it was very romantic, but the girl objected that it was not so. Then she handed over the bottle and said that this medicine can ease the suffering of the gentleman. Can he help him drink it as soon as possible? The kid replied that in general, you shouldn't use magic on a master during a full moon. But first, he will drink it himself just a little, since he cannot help him in any other way. The girl replied that it was good, but could not understand how it was connected with Shinel. A moment later, he exclaimed that everything was ready, and Estefania saw that the young man immediately felt better. Our heroine breathed a sigh of relief, but thought to herself that no one except the master should have known about this medicine. The boy said that he shouldn't worry so much. He already knew that she knew how to make a potion against Crowley's disease, since the gentleman told him everything because he is his main assistant, and no one else would know about it. The girl immediately calmed down, thanked Yuchi, then added that if he knows about the medicine, then he must know the truth about their relationship with Shinel. The kid asked in surprise what other truth she is the master's bride. What else should he know? Our heroine collected her thoughts and began to tell him everything. After hearing everything, Yuchi laughed loudly and said that now it's clear why she denied it so much this morning. Estefania said that the gentleman simply doesn't really tell or explain anything to anyone, so that's why it happened. The boy said that this all meant that she would be under his protection for 2 months, so if she needed anything, she should just let him know. Then he exclaimed that he wanted to show her something, and for this they would have to fly to the roof of the castle. She would be very happy with what she would see. The kid didn't really explain anything, so she had to just follow him. There she saw that she was tied to the very top of the tower by Elliot, who was sobbing loudly and shouting that he was wrong, so let him be forgiven. Our heroine asked in surprise that this was really what he wanted to show her. The little one said that he got even with her offender, and he got what he deserved. Estefania cautiously asked if he had gone too far. Yuchi replied that he decided to go against the will of the master, hurt his fiancée. It seems to him that Elliot deserves even greater punishment. The guy began to cry because he wanted what was best. He thought that the master was eager to get rid of her like other women, but he could not even think that she was so important to him. After these words, the kid pressed the button and a fist in a boxing glove automatically hit him in the face. Then he added that Elliot did not understand anything at all. The boy gave him a chance to apologize to their guest, but he missed his only opportunity for salvation. The girl noted to herself that it was better not to anger this boy. Yuchi said that even though this stupid narcissist was punished for her, she probably wants to get even with him. So let her take this thing, press the button, and the glove will hit him with all her might. Fani immediately began to deny and say that she was not eager. He already seemed beaten enough, and besides looking at him, she was no longer angry at all. The little one first asked if she was sure, but then said that he would still hang on the top of the tower for a couple more days. The girl laughed nervously and thought to herself that this cute boy turned out to be even more terrible than the master. A moment later, they returned back to our heroine's bedroom. Yuchi said that she was about to leave the continent, and she would like to do something to say goodbye because there are only 2 months left. Estefania replied that in fact she and the gentleman had already done so much for her, so asking them for more would be in bad form. The kid exclaimed that he promised to do everything possible while he was looking after her. Doesn't she really want to have fun, visit a beautiful place? They will do everything that Fani asks. Our heroine began to think that if she thought like that, the day of her death would come in 2 months. She somehow didn't even think about what she would like, besides meeting Mr. Shinel. But then she remembered something and said that she had one wish. The next day, they brought the young man a cake, and he asked what it was. The boy exclaimed that they had been baking it for 3 hours. The girl prepared it all on her own. Let her try it as soon as possible. The guy looked carefully at this cake, after which a flame appeared in his hand. The kid immediately grabbed it and exclaimed what he was doing. Was he really going to burn it? The master asked what he was thinking. The boy shouted that they brought this cake so that he would eat it and not burn it. The girl noted to herself that she thought that Crowley would not want to try her food. In her past life, our heroine dreamed of becoming a pastry chef. So when talking to Yuchi yesterday, she said that she would like to make a cake, but it must be quite difficult and expensive to get the ingredients, so if they can't, it's okay. The master's right hand exclaimed that there were no problems, and he would definitely find everything she needed. After which he asked if she had cooked them before our heroine replied that yes, but not as often as she would like, although she really loves the cooking process. In a past life, Estefania had a real sweet tooth. She was delighted with the variety of cakes and pastries that people create. Therefore, she even went to college to study to become a pastry chef, but died without completing her studies. And in general, none of her relatives liked sweets, so they did not support her hobby. But there are people in this world whom she would like to treat with her baked goods. The boy asked if he could try her sweets. The girl replied that of course she would be very happy if he tried them, but she would also really like for Mr. Shinel to taste them. Yuchi exclaimed that he didn't even know because he had never seen the guy eat anything sweet. In fact, Fani knew that the master had the same sweet tooth as she did, although there was no hint of this in the main story, but the author wrote about his passion for sweets on social networks. And if the creator of the work himself spoke about this, then it is the pure truth. The boy exclaimed that since she personally prepared the sweets, Crowley simply could not refuse her. However, the next day, Shinel did not want to try even a piece. Perhaps if this fact was not written down in the work, then it does not have any significance. Still, this was the usual information from the author. After the publication of the novel, even the main character did not know about his love for cakes. Even if this is true, the gentleman is unlikely to reveal his passions to an ordinary stranger. The boy upset asked that they wouldn't even try the cake. Estefania thought to herself that maybe she wanted too much. There was no point in forcing him to eat. It was better to just leave. But the boy asked if he was sure that the girl worked so hard on preparing this cake in order to please the master. Our heroine was taken aback by what she heard and thought to herself why he even mentioned this. Yuchi turned to Fani and asked the question that if the master does not want to eat, can he eat it? She answered that of course. Then he grabbed her hand, dragged her along, and said that she needed to go to the kitchen so that he could prepare tea for them. But suddenly our heroine felt that she could not move at all. Looking down, she saw a brightly glowing formation under her feet. It was a young man who told the boy to return him to his place. The boy pretended to be stupid and asked what exactly to put back in its place. Mr. Shinel did not answer anything and began to silently glare at him. Yuchi exclaimed that okay, God be with him, and put the cake in its place. Then the kid began to walk away from the office with an angry look. The girl was taken aback that he really wanted the baby to leave the cake in place. Apparently she should also leave now. But then she saw how the magician broke off a piece and immediately ate it. She could not believe her eyes. Then she asked if Shinel liked the taste because she tried. The young man replied that it was pretty good. Everything worked out for her. Estefania was shocked that in front of her, her favorite character was eating food that she personally prepared, and he liked. Maybe it was a dream. When the guy asked if she really cooked it herself, the girl exclaimed that yes, but the baby helped her a little. Then she said that she would like to ask him for permission from that day on to cook in the kitchen and sometimes treat him to sweets. The young man replied that he did not mind at all since it turned out well for her. Our heroine thanked him and noted to herself that she managed to please Mr. Crowley himself. But there will only be so many times before she can cook something for him before her death. Looking at how he eats, Fani thought that she loves him very much. Therefore, she asked if she could express her feelings towards him during their meetings. She had a great desire to share tenderness with the person whom she loves with all her heart. The young man asked in surprise what it means to express feelings. Our heroine replied that in the literal sense of the word, but if it is unpleasant for him, then of course she will not force him. Shinel replied that if she wanted it so much, then why not these are trifles compared to how she brazenly stole his first kiss. Fani exclaimed that she never intended to do this, and regrets what happened. She swears that this will not happen again. They can enter into a marriage contract under the terms of which she will be obliged not to touch him under any circumstances. But the young man replied that he didn't care, and they would do without any agreements, especially since all this would not last long. Estefania thought to herself that he was right. Concluding a marriage contract would take longer than she would spend within the walls of this castle, because their relationship would last only 2 months. All these requests, the contract, her living here, everything was initially beneficial only to her. She was lucky that the master allowed her to stay. Therefore, she replied that he was right. Then she would try to keep her distance from him and not cause inconvenience and let the guy forget about her selfish request. I thought to myself that he was unlikely to take her word for it, but she no longer had the desire to burn with shame. So she said out loud that in that case she would already go. Finally, she added that she completely forgot to tell him that he lay in bed for several days because of the full moon, and she was glad that he was already feeling better. When she had already begun to head towards the front door, the young man called out. Our heroine noted to herself that he again called her by name. Turning around, the girl saw that the gentleman was standing right next to her. Then she carefully asked if the young man wanted to tell her something. The young man said that in a week he would go to the northern lands and Fani would go with him. The girl replied that she didn't mind at all, but why did he need her there? Shinel exclaimed that he should ask the scoundrel and disappeared from the office. After some time, Yuchi explained that the master received an invitation to the coronation of the new ruler of the northern lands. Just recently, the king and the first prince suddenly passed away for everyone, and now the second prince will ascend the throne. Realizing that she did not understand at all what was being said, the boy said that the gentleman himself should have explained everything to her. Our heroine laughed and asked why the guy agreed to go to the coronation. He seemed uncomfortable in such places. The kid explained that royalty from all over the continent would be present there, so it was not surprising that the master was invited. And after that, there would be a festive evening. Estefania now understood why the gentleman would take her with him for the evening. If he was alone, then not a single lady would miss the chance to attract his attention. But if a girl is present there, the young man will be able to spend time in peace. Our heroine muttered that she could even cope with all this. The little one exclaimed that this is a common technique. Let him relax and enjoy it. Let him shift all these troubles to Shinel and let him have fun. Fani replied that he was right. It would be hard for him if she got in the way. Yuchi then said that what is important for such an event is that she needs a suitable outfit. The girl replied that she had nothing of the sort, but the boy laughed and exclaimed that it was no problem the dress would be his concern. After which he approached her and said that they would go to the magic studio right now. Having opened the doors, the baby immediately greeted everyone present. When the green-haired youth asked who the girl was next to him, Yuchi replied that she was the master's fiancée. The young man was taken aback by the information he heard and exclaimed that the gentleman really got married. How long did he sleep? Isn't this a joke? Then he grabbed his head and said that, since he says so, it must really be. So the young man is completely out of touch with reality and has not even heard such important news. After which, he quickly picked up a pen and said that he simply had to write it down. The kid grabbed our heroine by the hand and said that it was better to leave this weirdo alone and return to the main thing. Taking her to the girl, Yuchi said that her name is Lucy, and she is a magical seamstress. In the original story, this little girl made all of Angelica's dresses since she had absolutely no money. She is a silent little one who, as the story progresses, opens up to the main character. They had a relationship like a mother and daughter, and Fani really enjoyed reading about their relationship. The girl noted to herself that Lucy is 100 times cuter than she imagined her to be. Yuchi, of course, is also a cutie, but she has a completely different level of cuteness. Then she leaned over to her, said that it was nice to meet you, and introduced herself. The girl sewed a shirt for her. She really liked it, and thank you very much for it. The baby just silently looked at our heroine and did not answer anything. The kid said that Lucy is not a particularly sociable girl, so you shouldn't be offended by her. After which he turned to the seamstress and said that he had come to ask her for something. A week later, Fani, together with the master, goes to one important reception, and she needs her to sew for her, but she didn't have time to finish because there was a shout from behind that everything was ready. Our heroine noted to herself that this guy said that he needed to make a record about her and Mr. Shinel. Then this young man took everything he had painted and attached it to the dove, after which he released the bird out the window and exclaimed that let the dove fly. Our heroine asked in surprise what he was doing and why. The boy couldn't find the words because he didn't know how to say it and asked for forgiveness. If she were asked what she wanted to change in her life, then without a second of doubt, Fani would answer that she had to stop one eccentric magician. But at that moment, our heroine had no idea what kind of news he would spread everywhere. This news even reached her younger sister, and she found out about everything. It was written there that the ruler of the Central Lands, Shinel Crowley, engaged to the exiled princess of an eastern country. Immediately after the engagement, she began to live in his castle, which only demonstrates his serious intentions. Now the Central Lands have a ruler, and perhaps an heir may be born in the near future. Angelica got angry, crumpled up this piece of paper, and exclaimed that she really ran away in order to marry the ruler of the Central Lands. How is this even possible? Mom tried to calm her down and said that she could only get worse if she was so nervous. The girl screamed that she hadn't gotten worse for many years, and why she wasn't angry with her at all. The eldest abandoned them, leaving only a lousy farewell letter. Plus, she didn't give them any money at all, and because of her, they are forced to starve. She also dared to steal her best dresses. Why is everything so unfair? Rather than Estefania forever living a life that is better than hers, while taking everything away from her younger one. The woman said that there was no need to be so angry with her. She must have acted this way because of her. On the eve of her departure, she allowed herself to be too rude to her and her feelings. Apparently, this greatly hurt her older sister, and she decided to leave the girl knows that Estefania is not capable of being angry with them for a long time, so she will return home very soon. Angelica muttered that the newspaper said she was engaged to Crowley. Mom said that he was a cruel tyrant who lived alone most of his life. The woman believes that these are all ordinary rumors. The older sister has never met him and could never follow a person like him. Having calmed down, the girl said that she was really right, and this was simply impossible. Estefania would return soon in any case. Meanwhile, the green-haired guy exclaimed that he had not had such sensations for a long time and thanked the young mistress. After reading all this, our heroine was in complete shock and didn't even know how to react. The boy exclaimed that, as I expected from a clerk, he scribbled the article very quickly. The young man replied that such hot sensations should be disseminated as soon as possible. He spread the good news and is responsible for a newspaper that is read throughout the continent. Estefania was completely horrified, since now not only the Central lands knew about their engagement, but also the Eastern ones. The main problem was that now Mom and Angelica will see this news. It's just some kind of nightmare now. Absolutely everyone knows about it with Mr. Shinel. Then the guy remembered that he needed to introduce himself and said that his name is Piss, and he is responsible for disseminating information. This is his hobby. That is why the master instructed him to spread the news throughout the continent. So if she needs to get fresh information, then she should definitely contact him. Our heroine asked how he knew that she was an exiled princess from an eastern country, because Fani had not even introduced herself to him. The young man replied that my lady underestimated his ability to obtain any information from anywhere. But in general, he has a lot of questions for her: how she met the master, who was the first to confess his feelings, how he reacted to her origin, how often they spend time together, who proposed an engagement. Yuchi lost his temper and shouted that he should immediately leave the girl and not touch her. Then he asked for forgiveness from Fani and said that as soon as Piss heard a fresh sensation, he could not be stopped, just like recently. He simply wrote the news and sent it to everyone without asking anyone. The guy asked what was wrong with this. It wasn't some kind of secret, so he could ask Milady for additional information about the relationship as much as he wanted. The kid replied that, to begin with, in order to write an interview with the master's bride, Piss must ask the master himself whether he would approve of such a thing or not. The young man exclaimed that it would never be possible to come to an agreement with him, but perhaps it would work out with his beloved. Yuchi got angry and said that enough is enough. They came to talk to the seamstress. Let him continue to do his job and stop spreading unnecessary information to people. Hearing this, the young man immediately apologized and walked away. After this, the boy turned to Lucy and asked if she would sew a dress for Estefania. Then she looked at her carefully and said that the girl wants to take measurements from our heroine. Then he pushed her and said that she should follow her, and in the meantime he would wait. During the entire process, the baby did not utter a word, but even in the affair with Angelica, she did not immediately begin to talk. After some time, the girl said that everything was ready and walked away. Estefania noted that she had such a gentle and silky voice. She couldn't even imagine what it could sound like. It was simply the best thing that happened to her that day. Suddenly, the little girl turned to her and said that she had a very interesting smell. Lucy has, and then asked what it smells like. Unexpectedly, the sweet girl replied that she smelled of corpse rot. The girl did not expect such a turn of events, and was dumbfounded and asked what she was talking about. But the girl did not answer anything, but simply turned around and began to leave. Fani thought to herself that she knew that she did not have long left. The girl wanted to stop her, but suddenly heard some noise in the next room. It was Magdalena, who poked the newspaper in Piss's face and asked what it was all about. How can Mr. Crowley be engaged? What kind of nonsense did he write? The guy replied that it was true, and Yuki told him about it, and the boy never lies. She immediately turned to the baby and told him to take the trouble to explain to her what this all meant. The master's right hand replied that he did not intend and did not have to explain anything to her. Then I saw Estefania at the door and immediately ran to her, asking if they had finished yet. If so, then it was time for them to get ready for the reception. But Lively materialized in front of him, who asked if she was the same exiled princess from the East. Without waiting for an answer, the girl said that this was some kind of nonsense. Shinel would never have chosen such an ugly woman as his wife. Then she exclaimed that she had guessed everything. She bribed Piss to write this nonsense. As expected from the princess of an eastern country, the apple does not fall far from the tree. The royal family from the East is famous for its love of luxurious living. There is a huge gap between the rich and the poor, and because of this many people leave. Therefore, in the work, the main character asked Crowley for help in order to change her country and become the new ruler. However, the girl is right in only one thing: she married the magician only because of her selfish desires. But her words towards him were absolutely sincere, so the girl will not allow anyone to think differently. Estefania was scared to death of Magdalena, but she still had nothing to lose. Therefore, she stated, and that what difference does it make to her whether the master is engaged to someone or not if she does not believe that Fani is his bride? Then let her go and ask him about it herself. Although the girl does not think that he will explain himself to an empty place for him, our heroine noted to herself that she portrayed the villain rather poorly. But since she already started it anyway, she will go to the end and put her in her place. Then she muttered that Lively must simply be in love with Mr. Shinel. But what a shame Magdalena was late. And now it belongs to Estefania. I thought to myself that since she is his fiancée, she must show everyone how much she loves him. No bully can weaken her feelings for him. The girl lost her temper, began calling her obscene names, and raised her hand to hit her. Yuchi stopped her with magic and shouted that she was crossing the line. The girl screamed that she must have paid him too. The kid replied that even if he starts explaining to a dumbass like her why he supports Fani, she still won't be able to understand anything. Magdalena started screaming for the boy to let her go immediately and tried to get out of his bonds. Waving her arms with long, sharp nails, she hit our heroine's cheek and scratched her. Seeing this, Yuchi lost his temper and shouted, "How dare she even touch Estefania with her dirty hands?" Lively asked what he was doing if the baby did not loosen his grip. Then her hand would simply explode. She would complain to the master. The boy hissed that he should try if he could get away from him alive. Our heroine noted to herself that she had never seen him so angry. Piss got into a squabble and said that if they don't calm down now, he will spread their dirty secrets throughout the kingdom since disagreements have arisen between them. It is the master who can answer who he is with my lady. Then the young man did not waste time and immediately began shouting loudly that Estefania wanted to see the gentleman. The girl thought to herself what was going on because he would never fall for something like that in his life. But the greatest magician immediately materialized and asked what happened. The girl immediately ran to complain about Yuchi and say that this little thing almost tore her hand off with his magic. But the young man ignored her and immediately approached the girl to ask where the scratch on her face came from. Fani didn't know what to do in this situation. If she told the truth, he would simply kill Lively, and if she lied, she would anger him even more. But the boy immediately shouted that Magdalena had hit our heroine. The girl immediately began to deny it and say that she had not done anything like that. When the young man looked at her with a withering gaze, Estefania noted that he was damn evil and needed to be stopped. Then she mentally began to address everyone present, but it seemed that no one was going to do this. She, of course, does not like this arrogant girl, but she cannot allow the master to kill someone. Therefore, she pressed herself close to him and exclaimed that she did not expect the guy to come, after which she thanked him for worrying about her. But the situation was not worth it since everything was fine with her. But I thought to myself that I just wanted to die from the growing awkwardness. Meanwhile, Magdalena whispered that she would answer for everything and pay for it, after which the girl turned sharply and began to walk away. While our heroine was thinking about what thank God had passed, the young man picked her up in his arms, after which he sat her down on the sofa and ordered his subordinates to bring a first aid kit. The guys wondered if they even had it. Maybe something similar was stored in the basement. The boy said that he would never in his life go down to that forgotten place, only if Piss went with him. Our heroine exclaimed that there is no need to worry so much because it is an ordinary scratch. Then she paid attention to Mr. Shinel's gaze, and she even became scared. Therefore, she quickly corrected herself and said that she relied only on them. Yuchi exclaimed that it's great they will be back very soon. Already in the corridor, Piss said that after all the boy was right. The kid replied that he had said that they were engaged. The young man said that he had even begun to doubt whether he had written a plausible article, but now he wanted to know more details about their acquaintance. Then the little one turned to Lucy and said that after they finished taking measurements, Estefania came out scared of what happened there. But the girl, as usual, was silent and said absolutely nothing in response. Yuchi added that she is a very kind and good lady, so you shouldn't offend her. Piz took her hand and told her to really be more gentle with her, after which he added that they need to find the first aid kit that the master asked for. It's very interesting what they are talking about there now. The boy told him not to even think about eavesdropping, but the guy objected that he wasn't really curious himself. Yuchi replied that he thought the gentleman was just awkwardly flirting with his bride. When everyone present left, leaving her alone with the master, probably because of nerves, but she clearly felt how wild fatigue came over her body. But the girl decided that she should not show him that there was something wrong with her. As soon as she said that, she was a little tired and would like to rest, the young man immediately put her head on his lap. Our heroine could not even think that Shinel would allow someone to lie on her legs. The young man then told Estefania to extend her left hand, after which he abruptly put an incredibly beautiful engagement ring on her finger. The girl noted that the color of the stone on it was exactly the same as the color of Mr. Crowley's eyes. The greatest magician said that a protective spell was cast on him, so let him always keep it with him. For the first time, Fani has been given such a gift by which she can protect herself. But this is not surprising, because she is the Norma among wizards, like a lamb surrounded by wolves. Apparently the doctor said that it was not safe for her to go there since there was nothing for an ordinary girl to do in the Central Lands. But Fani arrived just for a short time, so it didn't matter where she would go. The end for her would be the same. And last, our heroine just wanted to spend this time with Mr. Shinel, after which she thanked the young man for such a wonderful gift. She will treasure it very much. The young man replied that it was good and that she should go back to bed, but our heroine objected that thanks to his gift, she already felt much better. Then she asked if she could behave with him the same way as today if he or she is bothered by other girls. The greatest magician replied that he agreed and had absolutely nothing against it. Our heroine noted to herself that this is just great. He won't be angry and he can put arrogant girls in their place. She exclaimed out loud that it's good she will now try so that no one bullies her anymore. When suddenly the young man began to stroke her cheek, Estefania could not understand what he was doing. The guy said that they need to practice because she wants everyone to believe in their love, and no one will fall for their game if Fani looks like a tomato in public. The girl couldn't believe her ears that it was he who suggested this, but she muttered out loud that she believed that they could cope without training. But the young man was not going to back down and said that it was still necessary to try. Our heroine tried to collect her thoughts because she just needed to express her feelings for Shinel as she always did. The girl asked for forgiveness in advance for this liberty, then hugged the young man and said, looking straight into his eyes, that she loved him very much. Then she sharply pulled back and exclaimed that she thought that this was quite enough. After a long pause, Estefania wondered why he was still silent and didn't say anything. But suddenly someone loudly started knocking on the door, and our heroine jumped. A boy looked into the room and asked if he had disturbed them. Shinel immediately silently walked past him and went out into the corridor. Yuchi pretended not to pay attention to this and said that now they would examine her scratch. When the girl straightened her hair to make it more comfortable, the baby saw the ring on her finger, after which the boy asked in surprise whether it was an engagement ring. The girl exclaimed that this is not so, Mr. Shinel simply gave it. The boy objected that the groom gave the ring. Our heroine noted to herself that she had completely forgotten that the novel described that wedding rings are actually worn on the left hand on the ring finger. But she understands that this gesture does not mean anything. After this, the boy added that now Estefania will definitely not get away with it. Examining the ring, Yuchi noted that the master chose a rather rare one. Fani replied that he mentioned that it had protective magic cast on it. Is that rare? The boy looked at her insidiously and offered to check how it all works. While the baby was saying that they would now treat her and go check her out, a very loud sound was heard. The baby immediately said that there was no need to be nervous. Our heroine exclaimed, "How can we not worry about this? Suddenly something terrible happened." Yuchi replied that this was absolutely none of their concern in any case. A white dove flew into the room and reported that the source of the explosion was a magic laboratory. Our heroine wondered to herself that this was really the voice of Piz. The boy replied that he should go there himself, but he and the master's fiancée were very busy. But when the young man said that it seemed that the laboratories had not been destroyed, the kid said that he would still have to go to them. Then the boy turned to the girl and asked if she would go with him. When the guys entered the office, they saw a huge hole in the wall. The laboratory staff immediately began to lament that they did not want this at all. And it all happened by accident. A magical laboratory is a place where magical instruments are created and researched. Apparently during experiments, Something went wrong, and it exploded. Our heroine noted to herself that magic, of course, is a destructive thing. The boy looked at them seriously and asked how many times this month have they allowed themselves to do something like this. Yuchi understands that they didn't do it on purpose, but he repeatedly asked them to be careful. The young people were simply shaking with fear and said that he was absolutely right. When the kids said that he would have to report this incident to the master, the young men immediately fell to their knees and began to beg him not to do this. Let him tell anyone, but not the master. The kids said that if they cleaned up there quickly, then maybe he wouldn't report. However, the norm now lives in this castle from this day on. They must be extremely careful in their explorations. Looking at the girl, the guys exclaimed that she was really the master's bride. Our heroine noted to herself that it seems that now all the inhabitants of the castle know exactly who she is, so she will have to behave accordingly, after which she introduced herself and said that she was glad to meet you. Yuchi added that Shinel values his fiancée very much. If she gets hurt because of their antics, then let them blame themselves. Then he decided to have mercy and said that if they understood everything, then this time he would fix the wall himself, although this should generally be done by the guys. The young people were very pleased and exclaimed that he was the best, after which they said a huge thank you, after which the master's right hand got to work, and the wall before everyone's eyes gradually began to be restored. Watching all this, the girl noted to herself that this was simply incredible. When Yuchi finished everything, he said that it was time for them to go and threatened that there would be no more explosions. The guys exclaimed that it was good they understood everything and thanked Estefania for visiting them today. Already in the corridor, our heroine noticed that there was something wrong with the boy and asked if everything was okay. The kid thoughtfully replied that he had some kind of bad feeling. Suddenly, the dove appeared again and said that it was justified something happened in the main hall and let him go do his job. The kid desperately exclaimed, "Why does he need all this?" and told Estefania that it was time to go. On the way, the baby asked for forgiveness and said that apparently today they would not be able to test the strength of her wedding ring. When asked why, the boy replied that there was simply too much work to do. Like Yuchi said, they really didn't go to the training ground, but spent the entire day running around and doing errands in the castle. In the evening, standing near her bed, the girl noted that she was simply incredibly tired. She hadn't run back and forth like that for a very long time, but the boy couldn't give a damn. With all this, he works like this every day. Wizards are truly amazing people. Although Estefania was aware of their differences from the very beginning today, it seems to have fully realized them. Unfortunately, she is an ordinary person and cannot keep up with their rhythm of life. And now she finally understands why the doctor was so worried about her. However, she could not even think that Mr. Shinel would give her something like that. Just for this moment, it was worth being reborn. As soon as she put on this ring, she felt how her body became much lighter. As soon as our heroine took off the ring, she instantly felt ill, and she simply dropped it from her hands. Fanny barely reached the bed and simply fell on it. It seemed to her as if her whole life had flown before her eyes. She was simply in incredible pain and seemed to be overcome by the realization that her life was about to end. The girl felt very bad and scared. She so wanted someone to save her from these feelings, but such a person simply does not exist. When Estefania let things go a little, she thought that she shouldn't forget about her fate. Due to severe pain, she was never able to close her eyes, but at least for the moment she was not in as much pain as at night. Then Estefania drew attention to the engagement ring that was lying on the nightstand. Our heroine was very glad that everything was fine with him and that he remained intact. As soon as she put it on her hand, she felt that all the pain seemed to disappear. If you remember last night, it was when the girl took it off that all this washed over her. Then Fanny decided that it was no longer worth taking it off because otherwise the terrible pain would return again. But she needed to find out why it worked like that. And for this, she needed to meet with Yuchi. When they came to a certain place together, our heroine saw two wizards who fought with each other using magical power. The boys said that this is a magical training ground. Young talents train there, and this floor is stronger than any other. This is the ideal place to test how her ring works. The young man exclaimed that he was very glad to see the master's right hand and never expected to meet him in the company of a girl. Then he asked if this lady next to him was the master's bride. The kid replied that yes, let them get to know each other. Her name is Estefania. One of the girls exclaimed that she was just a cutie and their master had very good taste. Another objected that he did not choose his beloved by beauty. Shinel is not like that, by the way. Why did they come at all? The boy took her hand and said that they had come to test the powers of this ring. All those present began to examine her jewelry and noted that it was made personally by the master. It has a protective charm, and it is very thoughtful of him. The master clearly made it with love for her. Yuchi then asked the question, who wants to see what the ring is like in action? The young man immediately exclaimed that he would never attack Crowley's bride for anything in his life. The girl with blue hair also replied that she refused. The other one smiled sweetly and also said that it would be better to look from the side. The boy said that since no one wants to, then he will try it himself, let him stand a little further. Paying attention to the frightened look of our heroine, he immediately said that there was no need to worry the baby was not going to use all his power, but would use a simple spell. Estefania replied that it was good and went where he said. She, of course, was very scared, but she believed that the baby would not harm her. The boy shouted that he was starting and released an energy stream towards the girl. A protective field instantly appeared around our heroine, which prevented the attack from breaking through. Then the magical power was reflected and flew back to the sender. Yuchi immediately used the formation to ensure that his own attack did not hit the baby. Fani immediately ran to him and started asking if he was okay. The boy replied that everything was fine, he just didn't expect the spell to fly at him. Then he said that this shield not only protects her, but also strengthens any spell turning it against the attacker. Our heroine noted to herself that this was indeed a very valuable gift. She said out loud that even if she attacks her, Estefania will remain safe and all thanks to the master. Yuchi replied that if she meant Magdalena, then he did not think that the girl would dare to approach her now. When the girl asked why the baby replied that yesterday, the master punished her properly. Our heroine asked the question that he really did the same thing to her as he did to Elliot. The boy replied that he did not think it was so cruel, but she clearly did not like this punishment. Yesterday, the girl ran away from him throughout the castle, but she couldn't hide. The young man still overtook her, and he looked intimidating. The girl was completely terrified and screamed. Why, what had she done to deserve such an attitude? Today, Elliot appeared in her room, who stated that apparently she also knew the wrath of the master. The girl didn't like him, so she didn't understand what he needed from her. The young man told her not to look at him with such anger. He just felt sorry for her. They were in the same boat no matter what. After which, the young man demonstrated that he was missing one arm, so she was luckier than him, although in general he can attach his hand back. However, this kid has it, and Yuchi will not give it to him until he cleans up the whole castle properly. But in general, for what reason did the little one begin to defend the usual norm? Although this is absolutely not typical for wizards. The kid is the best wizard after the master, the only one recognized by Crowley, but he seems to not like ruling the central lands at all, so Yuchi began to help him in managing the castle. The girl who was left without a leg screamed that, how can she come to terms with all this? Why is everyone on her side? Is he really satisfied with the fact that some kind of norm is next to the master? Leaving the room, Elliot finally said that if life is precious, then don't get involved with this girl. But Magdalena was not going to give up so easily because she definitely had to take revenge on her, so she screamed. What else? Meanwhile, our heroine asked if everything would be okay with Lively, but she thought to herself that she really didn't care. But Shinel can be very cruel, and I wouldn't want him to kill. The boy replied that everything would be fine since she only did something wrong once Estefania asked what that means only once. Their conversation was interrupted by a young man who asked what they were chatting about. Yuchi replied that it was about a certain lady. The wizards immediately realized that we were talking about Magdalena. The guy exclaimed that all this time he had been thinking why the master had cast a spell on the wedding ring. But now it became clear that it was all in order to protect her from that girl. The gentleman is very smart. Then he patted the silent young man on the shoulder and said that if they had attacked Crowley's bride, they would definitely have died. The girls noted that now he has a fiancée, and Lively will have to come to terms with this. One of them exclaimed that in order to prove his love and protect his beloved, he made such a wonderful ring. Shinel is so romantic. And yet our heroine did not understand why this ring affects her physical condition. There is no doubt that the spell on it is very strong. She needs to find out as much as possible about him, but under no circumstances should he be removed. Yuchi at this time said that that girl should have been punished for yesterday's act, but he had absolutely no idea what was wrong with her at the moment. The young man exclaimed that she had really already managed to do something. What a time it was. When the baby answered that he was the first, everyone present was upset. Estefania said that the boy has already mentioned this, but what does it mean for the first time? The girl explained that each wizard in the tower has only one chance to offend the master, and after that, a terrible fate awaits the person. Fani noted that everyone is very serious. Yuchi added that this greatly helps to discipline all the inhabitants of the castle, yet the second time the magician will not face death. But from Elliot's experience, we can say with confidence that the punishment will definitely not be easy now. Lively got away with only fear, but if she continues in the same spirit, she will be to blame. After all, she knows firsthand what happens to those who anger the master. Estefania noted to herself that everyone is given the right to make mistakes. The girl noted that, however, Magdalena is deprived of intelligence, so it is better for the lady to be on her guard. In the original story, Lively was tormented by jealousy, so now our heroine is faced with her in her most terrible guise. We need to be careful. Suddenly, a silent young man came up and said one phrase, "A magical request." The young man exclaimed that he had completely forgotten about it and added that they had to go. When the boy asked what the request was this time, the guys answered that it was killing monsters. The master's right hand noted that in this case they need to hurry, after which the guys flew into the sky and said that it was time for them since time was running out. Waving after them, Yuchi said that these four are relatively normal guys from all the inhabitants of the castle, so if he is not around, then he should turn to them for help. Fani replied that it was good. Then the boy added that it was time for them to return back to the castle. On the way, our heroine said that she remembered that he said that requests are issued to magicians depending on the complexity and their strength, whether any requests come to him. The kid replied that of course he often receives requests to evaluate and analyze things because he has well-developed analytical magic. Estefania noted to herself that it was now clear that thanks to her, he was able to find out that the bucket of water contained her blood. Yuchi added that he cannot be called an ordinary wizard. He can notice the smallest details in everything that surrounds him. For example, these flowers, he can say who planted them here, and when an ordinary wizard would not be able to answer these questions. But for him, it is as natural as breathing. The girl replied that it was simply incredible, but his magic couldn't see absolutely everything. The boy replied that, yes, there are also things that he cannot analyze, after which he exclaimed she would like to see how magical requests are fulfilled. He just got one, but it's true that it's for tomorrow. Our heroine clarified whether she could definitely go with him. The kid replied that, of course, the trip to the northern lands would only be in a week, but she wanted to earn money if she helped him with the request he would pay. Fanny thought to herself that, of course, she wanted to find a job, but not this kind, and answered out loud that she did not know how the norm could help a wizard. But if Yuchi wanted, then she would gladly go with him. The boy exclaimed that they had now agreed to go on a mission tomorrow, after which he exclaimed that he had completely forgotten because he still had errands in the castle, then asked if it was okay if he left her. Estefania replied that he should not worry, he did not need to keep an eye on her. If anything happened, she would immediately go to her room. Plus, she has an engagement ring from Mr. Shinel. The kid happily said that he then ran about his business. But in the end, he still said that if something happens, then let him call him. The master's right hand remained standing in place and looked after our heroine, waiting for her to disappear from sight, after which he grabbed his aircraft and went somewhere. He found himself in the sky over an unspecified country and asked the master if he was researching the migration of monsters and what kind of progress there was. Without even turning in his direction, the young man asked what he was doing there. When Yuchi said that, as the caretaker of his castle, he was obliged to report to him about his fiancée, who was intensely hiding something, the young man immediately turned around. The guy himself sees that she's behaving strangely. Maybe he noticed something in her behavior. But after he didn't answer, the boy said that he couldn't look after her forever. The girl also needed his attention. The young man asked why and why she needed this. The kid exclaimed in surprise that he really wanted to say that he didn't know anything. The powerful magician did not understand what he was talking about and asked what the young man should know. Yuchi said that, wow, even the master himself doesn't know anything about his bride. Shinel asked what he was talking about. The little one replied that it was better for him to find out about it from his beloved, after which he quickly got ready and said that it was time for him to go back to the castle. Having flown some distance, the boy thought that apparently the master really did not notice that something was wrong with Estefania. This morning, the master's right-hand man visited the girl. He knocked on her door and asked if he could come in. She immediately came out to him and wished him good morning. The boy asked if she had slept well, and the girl replied that everything was fine. Yuchi noted that the scratch on her cheek seemed to have completely healed, after which he looked at her carefully and said that in fact she had not slept at all, and this was obvious since she had bruises under her eyes. Our heroine replied that yesterday was such a busy day that she did not have time to fully recover. The boy suggested that she rest the whole day, but she said that this was not necessary. Then the kid wondered whether he should have told the gentleman about this at all. Meanwhile, our heroine, after saying goodbye to the boy, headed to her room. But at the last moment, it dawned on her that she should talk to Lucy. If she really knows about his condition, then she could tell the master everything, although the baby seems to know nothing yet, which means the girl did not report anything to anyone. Walking along the corridor in which the workshop was supposed to be located, the girl accidentally ran into Magdalena. Estefania was ready to meet anyone, but not her. But unexpectedly, the girl said that she was very glad that she was able to meet with her because she wanted to apologize for yesterday's behavior. She just acted disgustingly. She said all sorts of nasty things and also hurt her beautiful face, after which Lively bowed and said that she was truly sorry for what she had done. Our heroine looked at her in surprise and did not understand what kind of circus was going on. The girl continued that she herself must have realized that she really likes Crowley, but since his choice fell on her, Magdalena, on the contrary, wants to get to know the girl better. She swears that never again in her life will she interfere with her master. Estefania thought that she didn't believe a single word she said was Shinel's punishment really so severe that she changed her mind. Lively continued to broadcast and said that she had recently become his bride. Apparently Fani was attracted by his appearance, and she could not condemn her choice. But the girl has known the master for a very long time and can tell a lot about him. The girl noted to herself that everything is clear. Nothing has changed. If Magdalena wants to play with her then, so be it. Therefore, she thanked her for her kindness and said that she was not angry with her at all. On the contrary, thanks to this misunderstanding, she became much closer to Shinel, and thanks for that to Lively. After that incident, the master made this ring especially for her. I thought to myself that the ring on the left hand on the ring finger at the same time sealed with strong magic. Crowley put into this little thing feelings that a girl can only dream of. Magdalena looked at her hand in shock and could not even utter a word. Our heroine said that it is simply beautiful. The stone in this ring is the color of Mr. Shinel's eyes. She is very grateful to him for such a gentle gesture, and yet the girl is right. Lively spent much more time with him than Fani, and she will happily listen to stories about him from her lips. Unfortunately, Estefania is an ordinary person, and therefore cannot understand the mind of a wizard. But since she is his fiancée, she wants to know more about him, whether she can rely on the lady. Magdalena replied that of course she would be happy to help her and tell her everything. Lively was the only daughter of the current king of the Western lands. She grew up in love and luxury, and they loved her for everything, no matter how badly the girl behaved. Because of this, the girl grew up quite vain and cruel, who did not consider anyone none of the wizards in the Central Lands could get along with her, and she did not change until her death. I know the whole plot of the work. You shouldn't expect changes from it. You need to tell Yuchi about their conversation with Magdalena. But if you forget about her character, the girl is a true representative of a purebred aristocrat, beautiful and well-groomed appearance, excellent dressing style, as well as incredible abilities for magic. Compared to her, our heroine is just an ordinary little scumbag. Estefania did absolutely nothing to be a worthy bride for Mr. Crowley. She began to remember how her little sister asked her to buy her nail polish. Our heroine wearily replied that they had absolutely no money for this. Angelica exclaimed why the eldest recently bought her such a beautiful hairpin, and it costs much more than nail polish. Estefania replied that buying one bottle would not be a problem, but knowing her, she would want to buy a bunch of polishes in different colors. The girl asked why she decided so. The younger one didn't even say anything. The girl replied that this is a fact and believes that she has absolutely nothing to challenge it with. Angelica immediately had tears in her eyes and said that her big sister was very rude. After thinking a little, Fanny replied that okay, she would buy her one polish if the girl did not tell her mother anything. The youngest immediately rushed to hug Estefania and thank her for this. But our heroine thought to herself that she was always spending the money she earned through hard work on others. But now, when she had the long-awaited freedom, the girl could buy something for herself. Lucy and Piss appeared from around the corner. The latter greeted Fanny warmly, who asked how long she had been standing there. The young man exclaimed that from the very beginning, when Fanny first encountered Magdalena, he would never have thought that the girl would learn from her mistakes. She even apologized to her. And this is a very amazing thing. Then the young man shouted loudly that if she had attacked her, they would definitely not have stood by. After which he asked how she thinks whether Lively really repented of her actions. The girl replied that she didn't really think that she had given a lesson, but with this Fanny ring, it's not so scary to talk to her now. The young man immediately screamed when it was the master who gave it to her. Our heroine answered in fear that yesterday, immediately after they left. Pease immediately exclaimed that he should have sent Yuchi to the warehouse alone. He knew that he would miss something interesting. After the guy said that it was time to work, the girl cautiously asked that he would really tell the whole continent about the ring he had given him. But the young man replied that no, he would distribute this exclusive only in the Central Lands. This ring only proves her current status. In his opinion, everyone should know about it. Our heroine asked incomprehensibly what he meant. Piss explained that knowing what kind of relationship she has with the master, no one would dare to attack her, for example. Estefania thought to herself that it doesn't work like that. She really doesn't understand what's going on in the minds of wizards. But at the moment, all this does not matter, since it is much more important to talk to the seamstress. Therefore, I asked if she remembered that yesterday she said that she had a very unusual smell. Did the baby tell anyone about this? Lucy replied that no. Estefania noted to herself that thank God she could not understand how the girl could find out about her imminent death. According to the plot of the novel, the little girl did not treat anyone with hostility. If she asks her not to tell anyone about this, she thinks that Lucy should agree. Therefore, she said that she very much asks her not to tell anyone about this, especially Mr. Shinel. The baby immediately remembered the boy's words, that Fanny is a very kind and good girl, so there is no need to offend her. After which, Lucy replied that it was good, and added that at the moment she did not smell the smell of corpse rot. Our heroine asked in surprise that this was really true. Piss heard all this and was dumbfounded and asked what she had just said. Our heroine was afraid that he had heard everything, and how now to get out of this situation. If the young man finds out about her illness, he will spread the word about it to the entire continent. The girl had not yet had time to say anything when the young man exclaimed that Lucy had spoken, or that he had heard it. This is simply phenomenal. The girl until that moment had not communicated with anyone other than him, after which he clarified what they had just talked about because he only heard her voice. There is no content. Estefania thought to herself that since he didn't hear anything, he could be lying, so he replied that she said that she smelled nice. If you think about it this way, this is partly untrue. They really discussed her smell, although it's hard to call it a compliment. When she realized that the young man had fallen for it, she exhaled with relief that she was carried away. Yuchi screamed loudly, giving him a bad feeling. The boy ran towards her and said that thank God that Fani was with Piss and Lucy all this time. The girl replied that although she said that she would stay in the room, she felt a little sad, so she decided to walk around the castle, let him forgive her for that. The kid replied that everything was clear to him and asked if she had gotten into any trouble. Our heroine began to mutter that No then tried to collect her thoughts and correctly formulate an answer about Lively. But a young man unexpectedly intervened and reported that she met Magdalena while she was walking around the castle. The kid began to get angry that as soon as he left the castle, just for a couple of hours, she again climbed towards Fani. Piz replied that she, of course, was still bullying Estefania, but the master's bride proudly ignored all her provocations and even managed to put the devil in her place. Yuchi said that if this is really true, then she should still try to ignore it and not engage in dialogue again. Although the girl has a ring from her master that can protect her, listening to her eternal reproaches is simply unbearable. Estefania asked for forgiveness for making him worry unnecessarily, but the girl promised to share with her everything she knew about Mr. Shinel. The kid is right. It's better not to run into her again, however, as soon as Lively insults her affection for the master, extolling herself as the only woman who knows everything about him. Our heroine simply flies into a rage. However, it cannot be argued that Magdalena may know Crowley better than her, because the master she knows was just a character in the novel. At the moment, the girl is learning more and more about the most powerful magician in the Central Lands and wants to know him completely. Noticing that our heroine was thinking about something, the guy immediately asked that there really was a rift in their relationship. The boy replied that he had never asked the master about this, so he didn't know. Piss whispered that it would be worth it what if they called off the engagement due to the fact that they hardly communicate. And now Fani is even ready to communicate with this vixen in order to get to know Crowley more. It seems to him that they should help. Estefania Yuchi replied that he was right. It was not enough for Magdalena to do something else with her, so it was better to intervene. When the young people glared at her at the same time for some reason, she felt scared because she didn't understand why they were staring at her like that. The boys stated that they decided to create a support group in honor of our heroine's love for the master. Piz added that they will help her get to the heart of the master, and Lucy will also help with this. The girl was in shock and completely ceased to understand what was happening at all. Our heroine pulled the boy by the hand towards her and asked what they were up to. She already told him that she simply admires Crowley, and she has no sympathy for him. The kid looked at her and replied that she was hiding her feelings because of him. When Estefania asked what he was talking about, the kid asked if she didn't remember their first conversation. The boy asked if she would like to accidentally marry the master, and Fani replied that she did not. At that time, he didn't even know what she really felt for their master. No need to hide her true feelings anymore. So if they help her, then she can stay and make Shinel fall in love with her. Our heroine replied that she doesn't understand why he got the idea that she loves Crowley. Except for a feeling of admiration, Fani feels nothing more for him. Yuchi asked, "What then? Why does she need to get to know the master better? Is it really possible that in order to prepare sweets for him, he understands absolutely nothing?" The girl thought to herself that apparently Yuchi liked her so much that he even wanted her not to leave their castle even after the 2 months allotted to her. She, of course, was very pleased, but there was no point in that. Unexpectedly, Piss said that how curious it is. It turns out that the master's bride doesn't love him. How suspicious that is. To become a master's wife without feeling love for him, is she really with him only for personal gain? Estefania did not understand what she should do now. If the guy finds out that their marriage is fictitious, he will tell everyone about it. And if the magicians find out about her situation, then it will be unsafe to stay in the castle. Unexpectedly, the kid came to the rescue and explained that the guy understood everything wrong. The girl was simply afraid that the master would someday leave her, so she did not allow herself to show her true feelings towards him. Then he turned to our heroine and asked if he understood everything correctly. Fani replied that, to tell the truth, she had never heard words of love from Shinel, and therefore began to worry that this marriage was just a hindrance for him. The young man exclaimed that in this case they are definitely obliged to help Estefania, because Crowley is sometimes very difficult to understand. After which he asked for forgiveness for being mistaken about her, but she can count on them. They will help her achieve the master's love. The next day, flying on a broom, the boy said that it was good that everything was resolved this way. Our heroine replied that without him, she would not have found a suitable excuse, so thanks to him for that. After all, she believes that it is better not to spread the truth about her marriage with the master. Yuchi said that in any case, let them live in blissful ignorance. Each person has their own reaction and opinion to the truth. The less people know, the calmer their life is. But after everything that happened, the baby now understands that it is better for her not to know all the details the girl asked, in surprise what he was talking about. The master's right hand exclaimed that all this does not matter, but what is important is what request they will fulfill today. Their client is the owner of an antique store in the Central Lands, and the goal is to evaluate antiques. It will be necessary to restore order in his shop. Estefania noted that if he is from the Central Lands, then that means he is also a magician. The boy replied that yes, but there are both strong and weak magicians, and even if a person knows how to cast a spell, this does not mean that he is capable of all. That is why such magical requests exist, after which he exclaimed that they are almost there. Yuchi had finally arrived. The boy replied that yes, but today he arrived not alone but with a companion. Finn said that she must be their master's fiancée. He was very glad to meet her, then introduced himself. Our heroine replied that she was also glad to meet him, and said that her name is Estefania. After all these pleasantries, the little one said that today she would help him with his work. Suddenly, the old man got angry and shouted that there was no need to be stupid. Forcing the master's bride to work was simply unthinkable. The boy Mono forces the ruler to work. This is completely abnormal. Yuchi objected that everything is in order. The seller continued to be nervous and say that if something happened to his beloved immediately after the baby was assigned to take care of her, Crowley would definitely kill them. Our heroine was surprised and did not understand in what sense to patronize. The kid explained that last night Piss again sent word throughout the Central Lands. The girl wondered if he had really sent something immediately after their conversation, and then asked what the news was about. The man explained that the master appointed Yuchi as her personal protector. In other words, now the magician, who is equal in strength to Shinel, protects her in other words. With such a gesture, he expressed his love for her, even if the young man cannot be with her all the time. But now she will definitely always be safe. If even a hair falls from her head, then the master will undoubtedly punish everyone. Estefania thought to herself that this is some kind of nonsense. She doesn't know why the guys got the idea that her protection is some kind of manifestation of love. Shinel is just trying to make her stay in the castle safe and comfortable. They have absolutely no future with him because, when the time comes, Angelica will appear on the stage. The boy said that in any case, he shouldn't worry so much. For example, Elliot and Magdalena threatened the life of his fiancée but are still alive. The old man replied that this did not bother him at all. There were simply a lot of things in his shop that could harm the norm, so they had better return to the castle. Yuchi got angry and exclaimed that he had already said that everything would be fine with her. The gentleman took care of the safety of his beloved and then shouted for the girl to show him the ring. Our heroine was at first confused, but then extended her hand forward. At the sight of it, the man exclaimed, "What kind of work of art this is! What an ideal magic chain and such a powerful spell that is contained in this elegant thing. This is simply incredible. Could Estefania lend him this ring for a while?" The kid apologized for him and said that he was a regular old fanatic of all things magical. Finn looked at this ring spellbound and said that he would quickly return it. He just wanted to see this weaving and find out what it was capable of. Yuchi grabbed him by the arms and began to drag him out of the office, saying that he needed to go and rest, and they would handle everything themselves. Then he led the girl into one of the offices and said that her task for today was to arrange these books on the shelves. They were all signed so that she could find the one she needed. If anything happens, he will be in the next room, and let him call if he needs help. Our heroine noted that arranging books is not such a hard job, so she can do it quickly. When Estefania took one of the publications, it noted that it was very old, and even the name had already been erased. Then quite by accident, it happened that she let go of him and dropped him on the floor. But when Fani bent down to pick it up, she saw that the book opened to a page where it was written, "Research on Yuga disease." The girl noted that it was because of this disease that she had only a few months left to live. Estefania remembered the words of the doctor, who said that there might be doctors living in the Central Lands who are developing a cure for this disease. Fani thought that maybe there was a way to recover and started leafing through it. But it turned out that absolutely all the pages in the publication were empty. Then our heroine decided to look through some others and try to find the answer in them. Suddenly, the voice of a boy was heard, who asked what she was doing there. The girl asked for forgiveness and said that she had opened all these books, but they turned out to be empty. The kid replied that their pages were saturated with magic. In fact, the publications were not empty. It was just that someone, one might say, stole the letters from the pages, making them completely without text. Estefania asked in surprise why any person would do something like that. Yuchi replied that of course they could not find out the reason, but for some reason the person stole everything from these pages except their title. The boy said that he could use his magic to understand what exactly was done to them. Suddenly a man appeared in the library and said that this was not necessary. All these books belonged to their former ruler. When our heroine asked what kind of ruler, the baby muttered that his name was Rodolphin Norris, their former master, and accordingly the ruler of the Central Lands. Fani noted that the novel did not reveal any information about Shinel's predecessors, so she knows nothing about him. After which she asked why he needed this. He did this not with just one book, but with everyone in this room. The man thoughtfully replied that he did not know all the reasons, but could guess. All the masters were obsessed with the study of magic, and perhaps not all wanted to share their knowledge. Our heroine carefully asked if their former ruler was still alive. When the baby replied that, of course, she asked if he lived in the Central Lands. Yuchi suspected something was wrong and asked why she was so interested in him. Estefania replied that she was simply wondering why he no longer ruled in the Central Lands. The boy replied that he was not in their country, and he could not tell where that person was. Then the expression on the baby's face changed, and he said that unfortunately division and the struggle for power do not concern him at all. Therefore, it is the gentleman who can best tell her about that time Yuchi believes that if she asks him, the guy will tell her everything. The girl noted to herself that if you think about it, the baby is too young. And apparently that's why he didn't catch the change of power in the Central Lands, and she almost gave herself away. The man said that if they were tired, would the guys like to have tea with him? Yesterday he bought such delicious chocolates, and I'm sure that the lady will like them. Fani objected that she had done practically nothing, so she was not tired. The baby was angry that it was belittling its actions again. They were in no hurry anyway, so they could go and rest. While they are drinking tea, they will evaluate the magical instruments. He is sure that she will like them. Finn said that there was a lot of work in his shop. He did not expect that his request would be fulfilled in one day. So don't worry. After some time, the guys were already resting and having a nice conversation. Then our heroine saw a bunch of different magical things and was delighted. There she came across the same boxing glove that was beaten by Elliot when he was tied to the top of the tower. Already in the evening, Estefania sat in her bed and could not close her eyes because she was thinking about what she had learned today. Rodolphin Norris is a former master and ruler of the Central Lands who studied the Yuga disease. If he could tell her about his research, then perhaps there would be a chance to be cured. Then she realized what she was thinking about. She had already come to terms with and accepted the fact that she would die very soon. There was no place for her in the world of this novel. Even if you start looking for this person, her search can lead to even greater disappointment. So what's the point in fighting if there is no chance of success at all? Suddenly, the gentleman's voice appeared in her head, saying that she needed to raise her head and speak clearly. Otherwise, he would not be able to understand her feelings. All our heroine needs is Mr. Shinel. She really wants to at least talk to him. When a young man suddenly appeared in the bedroom, Fani asked why he came. The greatest magician replied that she called him, didn't she? The girl was surprised that he heard her because she just thought about it. But if you think about it, the master always came to her call at any time. Estefania stated that it turns out he can hear her voice, but I wonder at what distance. Shinel, that no matter how far she is, he will always hear him. Suddenly, our heroine laughed, and the young man asked what was funny about that. Fani replied that it just looked like some kind of miracle, or rather like her happiest dream. The guy leaned sharply towards her and asked what kind of dream she had. He was here right in front of her. Out of surprise, the girl pulled back and fell on the pillows, after which she asked for forgiveness. Crowley sighed heavily and lay down next to her, but Estefania did not understand why he did this. Then the young man asked why she called him at all. Our heroine was surprised that he really lay down like that just to talk about it. The girl actually wasn't going to really talk to him, but now she had no other choice. Fani could not collect her thoughts, since all she could think of in her head was that Mr. Shinel was lying next to her in bed. Then she muttered that she had never heard words about love from him. I thought to myself that, to be honest, I just wanted to spend the rest of my life next to him. Then she noticed that the young man was very surprised by what she had just said. She sat up abruptly and began to ask for forgiveness, saying that that was not why she called him. When Crowley said that he should speak then, the girl asked to give her time. Our heroine noticed that the young man frowned very much and did not understand why. Then she asked how she could learn to appreciate and love herself, but she thought to herself that because of disrespect for herself, she was creating so many problems. The guy replied that a person is shaped by his past. She became like this because of the events that happened earlier. First, she needs to rethink them. Estefania wondered what it means to rethink. Maybe she should remember those events in order to understand herself. She immediately began to remember that when she was 5 years old, she approached her mother and asked her to read a book to her. The woman replied that she was already an adult and could read it perfectly well herself. Angelica has just fallen asleep, and they cannot make noise so as not to disturb her peace. The little girl answered upset, okay, but thought to herself that she was the eldest. Her wishes would always be not as important as the wishes of the younger one. Then a memory appeared of how my mother said that very soon her and her sister's birthdays should be given to them the same gifts, so that Angelica would not be offended. The woman asked if she was okay. The 8-year-old girl replied that of course not. Estefania will be happy with any gift. If the little sister is happy, then she will be too. When our heroine was 12 years old, she asked her sister if the girl would like stew for dinner, since Fani had not eaten it for a long time, and therefore really wanted it. But the girl capriciously replied that no, and she wanted something light for dinner. Her little sister's wishes were always put before hers, and she was very used to this, so she always put her wishes on the back burner for the sake of others, and still does so. But life in this castle was her first desire, which she realized on her own for the first time in her entire life. Estefania finally did what she really wanted. The young man asked what was the reason for such a drastic change. The girl replied that she just really wanted to meet him, that's all. After which she lay back on the pillow and added that she loved him very much. Suddenly, the young man put a pillow on her face, and she exclaimed what he was doing. She couldn't see anything. Then he said that she needed to stop thinking so much. She just needed to act as she did when she came to this castle. If she has something that she wants to fulfill, maybe go somewhere, at least get rid of someone. Estefania just has to talk about it. Unfortunately, he is not a telepath and cannot understand her thoughts and feelings. Therefore, let her say what she wants to do, and Shinel will fulfill her every desire. Fani thanked him for his kindness and said that he did not have to do this since she could never repay him for his actions. I thought to myself that she was unworthy of these words because she was not the one for whom he would do this. So she added out loud that she should promise something similar to his real wife. They are not a real couple, so let Crowley understand her words correctly. Paying attention to the strange look of the young man, the girl could not understand why he was looking at her like that. After which she asked whether she had completely forgotten why the young man agreed to the deal with her in the first place. Our heroine replied that she remembers everything the gentleman wanted to avoid female attention. Shinel asked why Fani was telling him something like that. It dawned on Estefania that according to the plot, he still can't stand women, so her words sounded like complete nonsense. Therefore, she immediately began to ask for forgiveness for what she had just said. The guy asked her to think twice before saying anything, after which he asked if she had any desires. The girl thought to herself that apparently he wasn't listening to her at all because she had already refused him, so she replied that everything was fine and she didn't need anything. The gentleman exclaimed that apparently that little thing spoiled her completely. Fanny objected that this was absolutely not true, and he did not spoil her. Everything was fine as it was. But the young man interrupted her and said, "No. I think they were saying earlier that Estefania wanted to learn to value herself. She just needs to stop thinking a lot. She needs to speak right away if a desire appears in her head. Therefore, Crowley will fulfill one of her wishes every day." Our heroine didn't understand what came over him, but if he refused, he would anger him even more. So she answered out loud that it was good. After which she began to think that even though she agreed, she didn't even have any ideas of what, for example, to ask him today. But suddenly something dawned on her, and she said that since they had already decided so, she wanted to fall asleep. It was already late, so she didn't lie about her desire. As soon as Fanny realized what time it was, she immediately wanted to sleep. The young man immediately snapped his fingers, and she immediately found herself under the blanket. Our heroine thought to herself that she did not need any places that she wanted to visit, or any things. Her only desire was to always be close to Mr. Shinel, after which the girl closed her eyes and fell fast asleep. The next morning, Estefania woke up and noted that she slept very well. Then I thought that I actually fell asleep during a conversation with the gentleman, and whether it was worth apologizing for this. When she turned her head to the side, she saw a young man sitting on her bed. Our heroine was very surprised what the young man was doing in her bed. Fanny wished him good morning and asked how long he had been sitting in her room. The gentleman replied that in fact he had not gone anywhere, and she had been sleeping for too long, so let her get up because they had to go. This is how strangely our heroine's new day began. First, they all had breakfast together, including the boy and Crowley, after which we went to various jewelry boutiques. Then there was the making of sweets, which is what Estefania likes to do the most. And so the day came to an end, but the gentleman was still nearby. The girl did not understand why he had been burning her with his gaze all day. Yuchi could not stand it and said that he had wanted to do this since the very morning, but the master generally knows what the expression "restrain his ardor" means. Yes, he asked him to spend more time with his fiancée, but not as much. It dawned on our heroine that it was the boy who asked him, but if so, it's understandable why Crowley follows her all day. The young man replied that in fact he had no intention of fulfilling his request. He was here because Fanny wanted it. The boy and Estefania looked at each other in surprise because they did not understand what was happening. The kid muttered that it seemed that the master had understood everything wrong again. Shinel indignantly asked in what sense the girl herself told him about this last night. Fanny cautiously replied that she did not remember anything like that. The young man began to get angry and angrily asked that she really didn't remember last night. The girl immediately began to say that he had understood everything wrong, and the boy pretended not to hear anything. Then Yuchi exclaimed that he seemed to be the odd one out here, so let the master spend the rest of the day alone with his beloved. Meanwhile, he will go and see what magical requests he received this time, after which he said goodbye. Estefania immediately felt uneasy, because it would be just the two of them. Where did this kid go? And why did he leave her? The young man turned her head and asked where she was looking like that. Our heroine blushed all over and replied that in any case, she did not remember asking him for such a thing. Let him forgive her. The young man smiled and replied that he would forgive her this time, after which he asked what her wish would be for today. The girl thought a little and replied that she still had one wish. When the guy asked what it was, Estefania replied that she wanted to read a book. Do they even have a library in the castle? She would really like to go there. I thought to myself that since Mr. Shinel so needed her to ask for something, then it would be better for her to tell him about little things than about something immodest. And in general, he took it too seriously. Fanny thought that he would forget about his statement the next day. But why does the guy behave like that? Suddenly, the young man suddenly pulled her towards him and told her to hold on to him tightly. Literally, a moment later, they found themselves near huge doors. The girl immediately recoiled from him and thought to herself whether she could even get so close to him. Then she thanked him for taking her to the library and said that she would go then, but noticed that the young man followed her. After which she smiled and said that she thought that she would find her way around that room on her own so that he could go about his business and thanked him again for allowing her to take advantage of this opportunity. The young man replied that if she needed him, she should just call him, and immediately disappeared. Estefania breathed a sigh of relief and thought to herself that great, now she can calmly continue the investigation. Walking through the library, she thought that she should find books about Yuga disease, but still doubts that she can be cured. But since the master told her to change, then it's time to do something about it. In general, she personally wanted to ask the master about his henchmen, but he would obviously ask why she was interested in this, so she should not reveal her intentions. Perhaps the books of the previous ruler were still left in this place. Then suddenly she heard someone's voice, after which our heroine looked around the corner to see who it was. It turned out to be Elliot, who was scrubbing the floors and asking some creatures that were flying around him if it was possible to scrub it off at all. Then the young man noticed that Estefania was looking at him. The young man pulled back in horror and shouted that it wasn't her. Why did he do all this that Fani had forgotten in the library? Had he really offended her in some way? Then he began to shout out the names of the master and the boy, but the girl hastened to reassure him that everything was fine, and she was alone. After which our heroine asked what Elliot was doing in this place. Having demonstrated a rag, the guy asked how she herself thought he was serving his sentence as a floor scrubber. Why did she pay attention to his hand and ask what happened? The young man noted that she must not have seen it last time. This was exactly the master's punishment for what the young man did to her. Estefania thought to herself that the gentleman mentioned that he could kill anyone at her direction, but she could not even think that this was true. The girl even felt a little guilty before this narcissist, but only a little. The young man said that this was the first time he was being punished in this way. His limbs were taken away. His beauty was halved. Then the guy exclaimed that she shouldn't cry. Elliot didn't want to die at all. Our heroine responded in surprise that, in fact, she didn't cry. The guy said that she just had such an expression on her face just now, as if she was about to burst into tears. Suddenly, some small creatures flew up to him and began to ask who she was, because she was very cute. Elliot angrily exclaimed that they should not shirk. When our heroine asked who they were, the guy replied that this, of course, was shameful, but this was his strength. The young man, of course, thought that the familiars he would summon would inherit at least 100th part of his beauty. But no, this is a terrible shame. Fani objected that they were very cute. The creatures began to fly around her and tell her that their work was finished, so let her play with them. Elliot said that he would like to ask her something just in case, whether she is definitely a native of this world. The girl asked, not understandingly, what he was talking about. The young man replied that a creature summoned by a wizard is a common thing in the Central Lands, but as a rule, they become attached only to their master. However, there are exceptions to the rules. Fairies, spirits, demons, in other words, living beings who do not belong to this world, but have a positive attitude towards its inhabitants. Our heroine replied that she is neither a fairy nor a spirit, and not even a demon. She doesn't even know how to cast magic at all. The guy replied that he had no doubt that she was a person, he was just interested. In theory, a master could summon a creature without magic and take its magical energy for himself, although this is all at the level of speculation. He has no evidence. After which the young man asked for forgiveness for asking such an inappropriate question. I thought to myself that wizards also have a weakness for the dead or terminally ill, since ultimately their magical energy will belong to the magician. But Shinel made it clear to him that he would never allow her to die. Estefania thought that this guy had found out her worst secret. The point is not even that she is the master's fake bride, but that Fani is really not from this world. Meanwhile, the creatures continued to fly around our heroine and beg to play with them since their owner is boring and does not like to do this. The young man exclaimed that it was time for them to return home, and a formation appeared near his hand. Then he asked why she came to the library. Was it possible to get rid of him? By chance, the girl replied that she wanted to find something. When Elliot asked why she didn't ask the master or Yuchi, because they definitely wouldn't refuse her, the girl replied that this was a personal matter, and they were always so busy lately. After which she exclaimed whether the young man would help her in her search, but only this should remain between them. The guy asked what would happen if he told or refused altogether. Our heroine replied that what she wants to find will not harm anyone, but if he refuses, then Mr. Shinel will simply tear him apart for disobedience. The young man was very surprised and completely horrified by what he heard. Estefania thought to herself that she still wouldn't tell Crowley that she met him in this place, even if Elliot forgives her. But she needs help. She can't handle it alone, and there's no other way to come to an agreement with him. The young man scratched his head and noted that she was indeed a very scary woman. Even at their first meeting, she was not indignant at his bullying, as if she wanted the master to personally teach him a lesson. Our heroine thought about how to explain everything to him correctly, but the guy interrupted her and replied that he himself knew everything perfectly well. She did not resist because she was afraid of him, after which he replied that, okay, he will help, and will not tell absolutely anyone about this. When Fani said that she wanted to find everything about who ruled the Central Lands, before Shinel Elliot was surprised why she needed this. The girl said that he ruled before Crowley came to power, and she doesn't even know how her fiancé became a master, after which she feigned embarrassment and said that asking him about this was somehow indecent and even a little awkward. The young man replied that she did the right thing in not asking him about it. Shinel can't stand him, and every time someone mentions him, the gentleman's mood deteriorates terribly. Then he began to tell me that at that time he was still living on another continent and did not know the whole story, but he had heard something. The master began to rule about 5 years ago. Before his accession to the throne, there was a struggle for power. Under Mr. Rodolphon, peace reigned in the Central Lands, but at one certain moment the young man simply went crazy and began to kill all the wizards he met on his way. No one knows why he went crazy, but there were many victims. They say Norris even drank their blood. A real hell was going on in the Central Lands, but out of nowhere, he appeared a great wizard whose name is Shinel Crowley. He overthrew the previous ruler, and the people of the country began to worship him, and so he became a master. However, Rodolphon still survived despite the fierce battle. It is said that he still dreams of returning to the throne and ruling the Central Lands, killing Shinel in the process. Therefore, it is better not to ask the master about him because it will only get worse. Our heroine noted to herself that Crowley's predecessor was a cruel tyrant murderer. She certainly would not be able to ask him about the disease because one careless word would be the end of her life. When Estefania asked where he was now, the young man replied that they were rumored to be hiding in the northern lands. The girl immediately remembered how the master told her that in a week he was going to the northern lands and she was going with him. Therefore, I came to the conclusion that suddenly this trip became very dangerous. Then the young man asked if that was all, since he still needed to finish his business. Suddenly, the familiars, while playing, accidentally pushed him and Elliot, unable to keep his balance, began to fall on our heroine. Lying on the floor, Fani immediately said that she understood that he didn't do it on purpose, so everything was fine. But suddenly, the voice of Mr. Shinel was heard, who menacingly asked that he really wanted to die. The young man immediately fell to his knees and began to beg to forgive him. Familiars began to fly around Crowley and offer to play with them, or at least take a walk. The master grabbed one of them and sharply squeezed it in his fist, saying that they were having too much fun. Elliot immediately said that he would remove them now and began to quickly call them back. The gentleman hissed that he saw that life was completely inexpensive to him. Our heroine immediately came to his defense and said that the guy didn't push her intentionally. It was an accident and she wasn't hurt, so there's no need to punish him. She thought to herself that Shinel would not tolerate a second mistake, but the young man was certainly not to blame this time, and she did not want Crowley to dirty his hands. She then noticed that the young man seemed to have calmed down. Then she asked if she could make a wish for tomorrow now. When the gentleman nodded, the girl asked him to return Elliot's hand. The guy immediately muttered that the master was absolutely not obliged to return it to him, but Shinel asked where his hand was at the moment and let him speak quickly. When stuttering, the young man replied that Yuchi had taken her for himself. The gentleman immediately disappeared. Elliot noted that he thought that the end had come for him. Our heroine immediately asked him for forgiveness for all this. The young man replied that he didn't care about all this because she was absolutely not to blame for anything. Estefania noted to herself that as soon as the master left, he began to behave as usual, after which she wondered if she had called Crowley for help. Where did he come from then? Suddenly, the guy said that he did not want to remain in debt to her, so he would say right away that he should stay away from Magdalena. He already spoke to her after his punishment, but apparently the girl did not learn her lesson. This woman is strong in the magic of charm, so much so that she can subjugate the minds of even the most powerful wizards. Fani knows that in the original story, Lively charmed the magicians and forced them to plot Angelica. Now our heroine has become a threat to her, so it is not surprising that she can do something similar to her. She thanked him out loud for the information and said that she would take this into account. The young man added that if something happens to her, this world will come to an end. He noted to himself that he was not joking at all. Even the master is not as dangerous as this little one. Meanwhile, Yuchi was in the forest about to fight some creature. The boy did not waste time and immediately began to destroy it. When the deed was done, he felt that someone appeared behind him. It was the master who asked if he had the hand of Elliot. When the kid answered that yes, the young man ordered it to be given to him, but Yuchi objected that he had not yet learned his lesson. Then the little one guessed that this was the work of Estefania, so he replied that he would return it to the master. Then he added that I must first warn him that Fani was interested in Mr. Rodolphon, and in particular his relationship with him. At his mention, the young man slowly began to become furious. The boy immediately said that he personally did not tell her anything and did not even raise this topic, but he perfectly understands his feelings. But if a girl is dear to him, then he is obliged to tell her everything about a member of his family, Mr. Norris. Mr. Shinel hissed that they are not family, and there is no need to say so. Yuchi replied that he was right. The man rather just raised Crowley, and that's all. The young man grabbed him by the neck and hissed that if he said one more word, he would kill the boy. Yuchi replied that he should take the risk because his bride would be very happy about this death. The guy immediately loosened his grip and said that this did not concern her at all. The kid asked if he really thinks so, Fani keeps his promise, but he doesn't even try to become a worthy groom for her. Then he added that okay, let him do as he knows, the kid won't insist, after which he snapped his fingers. What he asked for immediately appeared in the hands of the young man, after which he said that he should take it and leave. He didn't want to keep Estefania waiting. The strongest magician immediately turned around and began to walk away. The boy looked after him and thought that it was very interesting what would happen next. After some time, Elliot was already looking at his returned hand and could not believe his eyes. Had the master really forgiven him? Perhaps it's not even about this girl. He just finally realized that the young man was useful to him and changed his mind. The young man hissed at him to get away. Now the gentleman won't repeat it twice. Narcissus immediately asked for forgiveness and quickly began to run out of his sight. Then Crowley looked at our heroine and asked if she would like to find out something from him by chance. The girl thought to herself why he suddenly decided to ask her such a question. Shinel added that that kid said she was interested in someone. Estefania immediately remembered Elliot's words that he can't stand him every time someone mentions him. The master's mood deteriorates. After which she began to think that the young man was really hinting at Rodolphon Norris. Therefore, she immediately began to say that he probably heard about this from Yuchi. But she was no longer so interested. She once asked him about the past ruler out of pure curiosity and nothing more. I thought to myself that she needed to forget about Norris, since it was more expensive for herself to get involved with such a person. Crowley asked if she wanted to know about him, because she was about to leave the palace. Estefania did not understand what he was talking about, and what a strange question it was. After which she replied that of course not, she would leave him as soon as the time came. Then she thought that apparently the guy decided that Fani wanted to stay in the castle forever. As she was trying to find out as much as possible about him and looking for the master's weaknesses. Meanwhile, the young man froze silently and thought about something. The young man remembered the words of Rodolphon that he was destined to be alone forever. Unexpectedly, the greatest magician took our heroine by the hand. Estefania decided that he was angry and began to shout that she would definitely leave this palace. She would definitely keep her promise. But when she opened her eyes, she could not understand why Crowley was looking at her with that look. After some time, Fani noted that the gentleman behaved extremely strangely. He did not let go of her hand all day, except for the moments when she went to the restroom. At night, the girl lay in bed and could not sleep at all. Then she looked at the guy who was sleeping next to her and thought that on top of everything else, he insisted that they would now sleep together. Perhaps something bad happened what is happening to him. If he cares about her so much, he does not understand why. If Angelica had been in her place, then everything would have happened completely differently, but Fani will never be able to take her place. And since she had the chance to be with him, she will give him all the love that she has, after which she whispered that she will always love Mr. Shinel. Then she muttered that he would have a wonderful dream and fell fast asleep. It turned out that the young man did not sleep at all and heard everything perfectly, after which Crowley moved closer to her and also fell asleep. The next day, the girl opened her eyes and realized that she was lying in the arms of Shinel. Then she suddenly jumped up and ran towards the front door. The girl did not understand how she ended up in the arms of the greatest magician. Plus, he is so handsome that she would rather die from this than from illness, and would even be happy. Estefania sat under the door and could not come to her senses from what had happened. Suddenly, a young man appeared, and he looked very worried. Seeing our heroine, Shinel asked what she was doing there and why she was sitting on the floor. Estefania replied that she just wanted to clear her head, that's all. Mr. Crowley did not answer, but simply immediately picked her up in his arms. The girl continued to not understand what was happening to him because he was behaving extremely strangely, after which Shinel put her back on the bed and lay down next to her. Fani was so nervous that she couldn't even move, but she said that today her request would be for him to go about his business. The young man replied that no, yesterday she asked to fulfill a wish for today. The girl said that she wanted him to return Elliot's hand, which he did. Our heroine replied that then let her fulfill today's request instead of tomorrow, but the guy firmly answered no. Then Shinel finally told her to shut up, but Fani was still unable to even lift a finger and thought that they would really continue to sleep next to each other. She had a terrible panic attack, so she screamed the boy's name loudly. The doors immediately opened, and Yuchi appeared, who asked what happened. The girl immediately ran up and tightly hugged the boy, who did not understand anything. Then she turned her attention to the young man, who began to get incredibly angry. When the young man hissed for him to leave, the kid replied that he would not mind, but Fani apparently does not intend to let him go. When Crowley began to lift her with the help of magic, our heroine screamed in despair that she could not stand his company for another second. After a while, she was already sitting on a bench and talking about everything that happened to Yuchi, that they were having a real Santa Barbara. Estefania added that the gentleman was probably very angry with her because of such words. The boy replied that he thought he was not angry, but rather shocked and slightly upset. Then it dawned on him that it turns out that the master slept in the same bed with her today. When the girl replied that she did and asked if something was wrong, the kid replied that Shinel never sleeps in front of people. Plus, there is little sleep in his routine. Yuchi could only see him in bed sleeping on a full moon. But since he fell asleep so sweetly in front of her, can she allow him to continue to share the bed with her? Fani did not find what to answer. Then he added that he was used to sleeping little, but magicians are people too. And since Crowley can only sleep fully with her, then this should be allowed. Fani interrupted him and said that she didn't think he would approve of such a decision. Most likely the guy was just tired from yesterday and fell asleep without even noticing her presence. Yuchi asked that if the master comes to her chambers again, then she should not send him away and allow him to sleep peacefully. Our heroine exclaimed that no, if the master comes again, he will sleep with them. The kid stood up and said that she clearly felt better, so the plan for today, trying on a dress in which she will go to the ball in the northern lands. On the way, he explained that the outfit was almost finished, but the seamstress wanted the girl to try it on, and Lucy would listen to her advice about adding some details. While the girl is not busy with anything so that she has time to finish the dress, if it does not fit her in size, or if for some reason she is uncomfortable in it, let her not be embarrassed to report this. Yuchi will tell the seamstress about all the changes. Opening the door, the kid added that he hadn't seen it himself yet, but I'm sure it turned out simply incomparable. But when they entered the room, they saw that the finished dress was torn to shreds. Behind him, the open door of the balcony was visible, and it became clear that someone had snuck in and deliberately damaged it. The boy immediately ran up to the dress and began to examine it. Then he went to the balcony and noted that he seemed to know who was involved in this. After some time, the kid was already interrogating Dooley and ordered him to explain everything. Suddenly, a young man appeared and asked what was going on with them and why they were scolding him. The kid explained that he tore the dress that Lucy made for Fanny. Through investigation, Yuchi found out that the guy was to blame. The girl remembered him from the time when they came to the training ground to test the properties of the ring. He was quite calm and kept aloof, so she did not have time to get to know him better, and cannot say whether Dooley is capable of such a thing. The little one continued to explain that this happened last night. Fur and traces of an animal were found at the crime scene. Based on the color of the fur and the size of the paws, we can conclude that the torn dress is the work of his familiar. Therefore, I repeated again whether there was anything to say to the young man in his own defense. Suddenly, the young man bowed his head and asked to forgive him. Estefania exclaimed that he probably had a reason for doing something like that. The guy explained that he did not order his familiar to do this, but as a master, he bears full responsibility for what his servant did. The boy said that our heroine had already met him before. The girl immediately remembered those huge, scary red eyes that she saw in the window, after which she thought that Mr. Shinel showed her his true appearance. Mr. Dooley's servant is not a terrible beast at all. The young man noted that doesn't all this seem strange to them, because a familiar cannot do something without the owner's request. Yuchi agreed and said that he also thinks that something is wrong here. Then he suggested that we first go back to the scene of the crime. On the way, the guy said that his creature Vito usually scurries around the castle without much attention from the outside, but the magicians are used to seeing familiars because they don't do anything without a direct order. Wizards tend to summon familiars as their servants. The stronger the wizard, the higher the rank of his creature will be. Master Dooley's familiar is a high-ranking creature. Usually, low-ranking servants have little intelligence and are capable of minor pranks. But not this one. Having seen the dress, the guys noted that only one name remained from it. It immediately becomes clear that it was sewn by Lucy. Since the young man sees remnants of magic in the fabric, she will be beside herself with rage when she sees it. The kid turned to the young man and told him to call his familiar. After Dooley recreated the formation and summoned Vito, a huge animal immediately appeared. When the young man said that he had a conversation with him, the creature asked what exactly he wanted to know. The guy asked if he tore this dress. The familiar answered that yes, when he was asked why he did it. Vito replied that he really didn't want it. Yuchi asked if he wanted to say that someone had manipulated his mind. The animal replied that he could not answer this question, because as soon as he woke up, he immediately saw the dress torn to shreds. The boy replied that everything was clear to him and thanked him for telling him everything, and added that Vito could go. The young man exclaimed that it was clear whose hands this was, and who was to blame, so it was necessary to go and sort it out with her. When the kid exclaimed that there was no need to go anywhere, the criminal himself came to the crime scene. Magdalena appeared at the door and asked who the criminal was, and what young detectives do in general. The guy shouted that it was she who had bewitched the familiar's mind. The girl pretended that she did not understand anything, and exclaimed that this was very rude of him, since she did not know what he was talking about. The young man got angry and shouted that stop being a fool, only her magic is capable of such a thing. Yuchi stopped him and independently asked the question whether she ordered the being Dooley to tear Fanny's dress. Lively replied that as she had already said, the girl doesn't know what's going on. Apparently the dog completely got out of hand and tore the mistress's dress. It's very unfortunate, but she doesn't understand the scale of the tragedy. Lucy can make the dress again right, so it's stupid to make such a fuss about some outfit. Our heroine began to get angry since Magdalena did not value the work of the seamstress at all. The girl continued to say that this little one only enjoys sitting and sewing. She doesn't see the white light. She only makes friends with a thread and a needle, a pathetic child who can't do anything other than that. Let the guys think that this incident has given her a new reason to live another day of her miserable existence. But if she is naughty, then Estefania can always complain about her to the master. Suddenly, the girl came up and slapped Magdalena in the face as hard as she could. The girl grabbed her cheek and screamed that how dare she. But Fanny ordered her to immediately apologize to Lucy. She would not allow her to continue to insult the girl. Lively asked what she said wrong. It's the pure truth, as if the girl had known the baby for the first day. Estefania hissed that if she doesn't go and apologize to her now, then our heroine will take appropriate measures. When the girl asked what for example, Fanny replied that she would tell Mr. Shinel about her behavior. Magdalena got very angry and wanted to hit her, so she started clenching her fist. The voice of a young man was heard, who said that he would not advise her to do this, since her attack would return to her only with redoubled force. Let her not forget that she was being protected. Therefore, Lively exclaimed that she really wanted to get along with her, but it was a pity that it didn't work out. After she sharply turned around and began to leave, our heroine wanted to stop her, but the boy grabbed her hand and said that she didn't need to do this. After some time, Lucy saw what happened to the dress she was creating. Estefania began to apologize and say that she was sorry because she tried very hard for her, but in the end, everything was ruined. Yuchi exclaimed that what does she have to do with it? Let him look, the baby is not angry with her at all. The little girl just stood and silently looked at the tattered outfit. Piss told her that if she wanted to punish him, then let her act. The girl suddenly became gloomy, and it began to seem that she was in some kind of trance. While our heroine was thinking what had just happened, a familiar appeared in the room. The animal stopped in front of the baby and silently bowed its head. Literally a moment later, a magical formation appeared behind the baby, after which a powerful energy flow struck the creature. After this, the guy said that they would talk to Magdalena later, and there was no need to worry about the dress. It would be like new by the time of the ball. The girl smiled and thanked them for everything they do for her. The boy said that they had sorted out the dress, and now they could rest. And at the same time, he began to think about preparing something like this for dinner. Unexpectedly, our heroine apologized and said that she wanted to make sure that everything was okay with Vito, after which she turned and began to run somewhere, saying that she would be back for dinner. When Fanny approached the animal, it asked why she had come. The girl replied that she just wanted to talk a little. The familiar stood up, sniffed her, and noted that the smell was very interesting. Estefania immediately remembered Eliot's words that a creature summoned by a wizard is a common thing in the Central Lands, but they only become attached to their master. She has already muttered out loud that her smell really indicates that she will soon die. Vito replied that he didn't know whether she would die or not, but her smell just seemed pleasant to him, so he wanted to talk to her. Remembering the little girl's words about the smell of corpse rot coming from her, it dawned on our heroine that Lucy is a demon. The creature replied that it was true, and its owner was that strange type with round glasses. Now the girl understood why she did not act of her own free will. There was not the slightest mention of this in the original story. She thought that the girl was a magician like everyone else. It is natural that she could not know some little things that were not indicated in the novel. The author did not write them because this would not have affected the original plot in any way. The familiar explained that this demoness is much stronger and a couple of ranks higher than him. Her scent is special, and she can sense approaching death. Estefania thought to herself that a girl who smells death is incredibly comical that she met her here. She said out loud that Lucy told her that she smelled of corpse rot, but after some time, according to her, she began to smell differently. What could this be connected with? The familiar replied that he did not know, and it was better to ask her about it directly. However, there is no doubt that this is related to the Wizard King, the man they all call Master. Our heroine looked at him in surprise and asked what he meant. Vito replied that she really doesn't feel such a strong aroma of affection that envelops her. This magic literally emanates from her, as if she unconditionally belongs only to him. Perhaps her physical condition is changing due to his magic on her body. The girl thought about his words. Maybe his magic was on her because they slept together. Or it was the ring. When the creature saw the ring on her finger, it realized that Shinel was in love with her. Then this explains why Estefania was literally marked with magic. Our heroine replied that he was mistaken. The master would never love someone like her. There is no charm in her, And even if she and Angelica had diverged in this story, nothing would have changed, since even her relatives could not love Fanny. Therefore, why on earth would such a wonderful person love her? Then she said that she would talk to Lucy about her smell, and added that she had one more question for him. When she first arrived at the castle, he came to her room at night. Can the creature say why? Estefania remembers those scarlet eyes full of madness, and now she looks at Vito, and as if it was not him at all. The familiar replied that this had not happened and did not understand what she was talking about. Fanny thought that this was the same case as with the dress. What if on that day his consciousness was controlled by Magdalena? But she and the girl did not yet know each other, and she did not show any signs at their first meeting that she had seen her before, after which she thanked the animal for the explanation and clarified that this was exactly what she wanted to know. Then she got ready to leave, but turned around and asked how he was feeling since the baby hit him hard. The creature sighed heavily and replied that it was in great pain. On the way, the girl wondered what if this was not the first time Lively had manipulated Vito's consciousness and used it to get rid of those she didn't like. Perhaps that day the girl was just practicing. In fact, the magic of Magdalena's charm is simply terrifying. If not for this ring, it would be difficult for her to survive in this castle. It is necessary to talk with the gentleman frankly, what he thinks about what he wants in general. She, of course, would like to avoid such a conversation, but it is necessary. In order to no longer create problems for Mr. Shinel, she must understand what he wants himself. Then looking around, I realized that I was so immersed in my thoughts that I didn't even notice where I had come. Behind her, she saw a wall destroyed by magic, after which I thought that the boy would be beside himself with rage when he saw this. Suddenly, she heard a terrible roar and turned around and saw Vito, who looked crazy and was drooling. Our heroine began to ask why he was in the castle at all. Maybe he wanted to ask something. But the otherworldly creature did not answer, but only became angrier and growled louder. These were the same crazy red eyes that she saw that night. Estefania did not understand what to do, and was so scared that she could not even say a word. The girl backed away until she was on the edge. Magdalena suddenly appeared and said that she seemed to be in desperate straits at the moment. She simply decided that since she couldn't attack her, then why not do it differently? But she couldn't even think that Fanny would fall into this trap so easily. After which she asked what it was like to be the master's bride. Now she was so self-confident she felt power in her hands. Let him forgive her, but she will never get the master. She has no place next to him. After which Magdalena screamed, "Die," and the animal rushed at our heroine. Estefania automatically took a step back and immediately began to fall down. No matter how hard everyone tried to save her, the girl was able to kill her, but she does not intend to die so easily. Therefore, she took out a button from a boxing glove and said the words to Lively that she was very sorry that they never managed to get along. The girl did not expect such a turn, and did not even have time to dodge the blow. Having lived next to Crowley, she realized 3 things. First, Fanny had lived her whole life as if in a trap. Second, do not underestimate the power of the people around. And third, she only wants to die at his hands. If she had asked for something like that, the young man would certainly have killed her for her insolence. But our heroine wants to live with him to the end, and end her life the way she wants it. It seems that the master will not hear her, will not come, and will not have time to save her. Is this really the end? Suddenly she appeared from a past life who said that Estefania wanted to free herself from the shackles of the past and change. So maybe it's time. She has nothing to fear. Let her just call his name, and that will be enough. Our heroine noted that this was correct because she really wanted to change. Therefore, she mentally asked Mr. Shinel to save her, and this request would be her first step. The young man appeared as if out of nowhere, and immediately picked her up in his arms. She couldn't believe that he really came, but the guy asked what happened. Then Shinel saw Magdalena, who was lying on the floor, passed out. The young man immediately began to fly into a rage. Our heroine thought that if she didn't stop him, the story of the novel would change dramatically, after which she tugged at his shirt and pleadingly asked him not to kill her. Crowley smiled insidiously and asked why leave her alive. Lively loved everyone, and everything she desired ended up being hers. Her father said that he contacted a fashion house, and they made a dress especially for her. The girl began to be capricious that it was not cute. She wanted a shiny dress. The Pope immediately asked for forgiveness and said that he would order the most beautiful outfit to match her. It would be decorated with precious stones. At the ball, everyone present admired how beautiful Magdalena was. One of the guys said that she was betrothed to the prince. But this is not surprising because she is the most beautiful girl from the Western lands. He responded differently that he agreed, but he still liked a girl like Princess Mia. The girl heard this and began to direct her charms in his direction. The young man immediately changed his mind and said that she is the most beautiful woman of all for the sake of such a lovely lady. It is not a sin to sacrifice life. One day, the father burst into his daughter's bedroom and asked how to understand all this, why she decided to head to the Central Lands, after which he clarified whether it was because of the dissolution of the engagement to the prince. Magdalena replied that she didn't give a damn about the prince whom she had never seen in her life. The girl found herself a worthy husband. This is Shinel Crowley. He will become her betrothed. She heard that the master was an unapproachable person, but she was sure that sooner or later he would love her. Until Estefania appeared in their lives, the girl did not understand what the master found in her. It was an obstacle between her and Crowley. So she decided that if the girl disappeared, the master would finally look at her. She believed in this with all her heart. But why was he now strangling her with the help of his magical abilities? A demoness suddenly appeared Lucy, who asked him to stop. The young man asked what she wanted. Was she really going to interfere with him? The girl replied that no, she just wanted to finish her off herself. Magdalena looked at her black wings, sharp ears, and could not believe her eyes. These signs pointed to a demon. These creatures sometimes take human form, but she didn't know that Lucy was one, so she started screaming loudly for her to spare her. But the young man and the little girl looked at her carefully, and at the same time muttered for her to die, after which the guys released all their magical power into her. When it was all over, the boy noted that he himself should have done this a long time ago. It is unclear what this woman with such a vile character was counting on. The kid remembered the words of our heroine when she was little, that she wanted him to be the happiest in the world. And then he thought that'd be sure to make her the happiest, no matter what it costs him, and therefore he must do everything right. After some time, they were already sitting together, and Yuchi asked if she understood what they were going to talk about now. Actually, the little one was worried and didn't think that she would ever have to use that thing. Fani remembered how he handed her this glove and said that although she has a ring that will protect her in case of emergency, she is an attacker, and she needs it for self-defense. When the girl said that it was so huge, and it was unclear how to wear it, Yuchi exclaimed that there was no need to worry. The glove can be made smaller, and so our heroine can always keep it at hand. Estefania, I actually didn't think of using it until this very day. Then the girl asked what happened to Magdalena because she heard her screams outside. After Mr. Shinel picked her up, he immediately teleported her into the room. Then the young man suddenly disappeared, and she does not know what happened next. The boy thoughtfully replied that Lively seemed to be dead or not. Our heroine noted that if she was really dead, then the original story would be irrevocably changed. Suddenly, Estefania lost consciousness, and Yuchi could not understand what was happening to her. When she came to her senses, she began to ask for forgiveness and say that apparently fatigue had simply accumulated. The baby asked her to stop apologizing. Fani noted to herself that who would have thought that she would come down with a high fever? Suddenly, the boy said that for no reason people were so feverish. He knew very well that she was trying with all her might to hide her poor health. She felt bad too often, and he simply cannot ignore her condition. The girl replied that she just got tired very easily, so she didn't bother him with these stories, so let him forgive her. The kid answered upset that he was very sorry that he couldn't help her. Our heroine immediately exclaimed that there was no need to say that because Yuchi shouldn't. Then the little one said that he should not have brought up this topic right now, so let her rest, and he will visit her tomorrow. When the boy left, our heroine began to think that the reason was not her illness. She was too shocked by how she had irrevocably changed history. Estefania then carefully removed the wedding ring from her finger. She was immediately seized by terrible pain, and convulsions began to twist. When the girl put it back on, she immediately felt much better, as if she were not sick. Even if Magdalena is dead, the master will still meet Angelica one day, but she has a premonition that now history has changed forever. This feeling has become especially strong after the recent changes in Shinel's behavior. Why does he want her not to live in the past? Why does he share the same bed with her? Why does he want her to survive? Although this is impossible, and Fani clearly decided not to build castles in the air, maybe he fell in love with her. Then she muttered that the master loves her, but this simply cannot be true. The young man who quietly entered her room was simply shocked by what he heard. The young man's first impression of her was that she was very strange. Princess or not, nothing stopped the master from killing her. Therefore, I did not want to tolerate her secrets and beating around the bush, and was going to get rid of her right away. But when she screamed that she really, really liked the master, and he had the right not to love her, but Fanny would not allow him to say that her feelings were not real. The guy, for the first time, felt a trembling in his heart. Shinel did not understand what this feeling was and what caused it, so he decided to leave her in the castle. Then Crowley approached the boy and said that from that day on, he would take care of that woman. Yuchi noted that again, there were no specifics, which is his habit of not really explaining anything. After which he added that as he understood he needed to look after Estefania. But why? The greatest could reply that starting from today she will live in the castle. The kid couldn't even think that the master would allow someone to live in it. It just sounds like some kind of joke. Then he asked whether the girl was their guest. The young man replied that she was his bride. The boy expected to hear anything but not this, so he was shocked. After which he said that he could not refuse him, but he was stuck with these monsters and would return only in a week. Therefore, who will take care of the girl during his absence? The gentleman answered that he was a narcissist. Yuchi exclaimed that Elliot is the worst option as he is simply hopeless, after which he exclaimed that, okay, that means he needs to deal with everything as quickly as possible. This kid agreed to look after her for a reason, and this can be understood by the way he behaves with her. Therefore, at first, the young man stayed away from her. The guy felt that if someone dared to touch her, he would definitely explode from overwhelming animal anger. But why is she so afraid of him, and why does she admire him? Crowley thought she was a self-confident princess, but in fact, she turned out to be fragile like phosphorus. When she confessed her love to him with that happy smile on her face, his heart began to beat stronger each time. Did Shinel really fall in love with her? But he didn't know what was going on in this woman's head, and he couldn't understand himself. When he was 5 years old, they walked with Rodolphe through the snowy mountains, and the man said that he really didn't have a single emotion. He was like a doll or something. Although this may be true, firstly, his parents abandoned him at a young age and he does not know how to control his magic. Secondly, the baby almost died because he couldn't even really use it. What kind of life does he have anyway? Shinel sharply kicked him on the leg and ordered him to finally close his mouth. The young man exclaimed that he was behaving so disrespectfully, although he should be grateful to him for not being eaten by monsters. The future greatest magician replied that he absolutely did not care. Rodolphe sighed heavily and said, "Okay, don't leave such a fool alone in the mountains." Unfortunately, people like them are doomed to be lonely, those who will never know what true love and feelings are. If words about love are spoken to him, it is most likely because of his power or his pretty face. Therefore, let the boy not even try to look for love in someone. It is a pity that Norris never met someone who would convince him of such judgments. Then he looked at Crowley and noted that he seemed to like being alone anyway. As the guy said, no one ever loved him. Everyone always just needed something from him. Although he was quite tired of the life of a man surrounded by faceless dolls, he was not going to change anything about it. Shinel cannot fall in love. It even sounds like nonsense, so it is necessary to discard this thought. This was until the young man felt that same fear. He continued to ask himself why he said and acted this way until he heard Estefania mutter in her sleep that the master loved her. Although the guy tried his best to escape from her feelings, he still gave her a ring that fits so perfectly on the ring finger of her left hand. As soon as she called his name, he immediately found himself next to the girl and always strived for this. The young man knows that Fani has doubts, but it no longer matters no matter what she is really up to. Shinel will not let her escape. The girl can only blame herself for this. And the moment when she appeared in front of him, then whispered out loud for Estefania to wake up quickly. The very next morning, our heroine's thoughts were not at all about him, but about what awaited her in the room. Seeing some woman, the girl asked what it all meant and who she was. The boy exclaimed that he brought her a doctor. He believes that it is better to entrust this normal health to him and not to magicians. After which he waved goodbye to them and said that he was leaving them alone. Then I remembered something and added that, as for Vito, there is no need to be afraid anymore now he is prohibited from free entry. Estefania did not understand what to do, because when the doctor examines her, he will definitely notice the symptoms, and this cannot be allowed. Therefore, she said that she was grateful that she had come all this way to get here, but she did not need any examination. She had already been seen by a doctor earlier, and he said that she was fine. She was just tired, and there was no need to examine her again. I thought to myself that I had to avoid this in any way, because if she was examined, the results would be seen by Yuchi and Mr. Shinel, and everyone else, none of them should know the truth. The woman listened to her carefully and said that if she had any concerns, she could share them with her, and the doctor would try to help. The doctor undertakes not to disclose information about the patient's condition to anyone without his direct consent, and she can guarantee this. Fanny thought a little and said that if this examination remains between them and she promises not to disclose the results to anyone, then Fanny agrees. The doctor replied that of course, and introduced herself saying that she was the court physician of the Western lands, and her name was Gilnet. She was very pleased to meet you. The girl could not even think that she would ever be examined by a court doctor. How could Yuchi even persuade her to come to the Central Lands? Estefania began to explain that she had advanced Yuga disease and had less than 3 months to live. She knew this even before arriving here, and she came here so that before her death she would not regret anything because she really wanted this. More than a month has passed since the beginning of her stay within these walls, after which she asked how bad everything was. The woman replied that she understood that her statement would seem strange to her, but the girl's situation had not changed at all since her diagnosis. Our heroine was surprised at first, then looked at the ring and thought about what must be happening because of it. When the doctor asked if anything unusual had happened to her, Estefania replied that after the magician gave her this ring, she felt much better. The doctor stated that it was somehow connected with her condition. Let her tell me more about it. Our heroine replied that the one who gave it said that he had cast a protective spell on it. According to other wizards, it contained enormous magical power. The woman replied that if she was really huge, then it could harm her. According to the Dr. Gilnet, who also studied magic and magicians, each magical instrument contains power. Some more, some less. The higher the magic indicator in them, the greater the chance to influence the normal body. This can only have negative consequences and make things worse. That is why there can be no question of constantly carrying a magical instrument with you. Infusing magical power into the norm is dangerous. This is a well-known fact. Apparently, the magician who gave the ring does not know about it. But what surprises her more is that the magic of the ring somehow stopped the spread of the disease. This is the first time she has seen this. But what if we make the assumption that magic is harmless to a norm that suffers from Yuga disease? However, the fact remains that for an ordinary person, any magical effect is poison. Everything she said is just a hypothesis, the authenticity of which is only probable. So now her task will be to refute or find evidence. Until then, let Fanny not remove the ring. Then the woman added that let Mrs. Estefania not lose hope they will fight together. After some time, the girl reflected that having arrived at the castle, she did not even think that she would be able to find the key to solving her illness. But if the wedding ring really saved her from death and illness, then she simply owes her life to Mr. Crowley. And what if then Fanny could stay next to him forever? She still does not believe that her death can be avoided, but she can at least stay with him maintaining her health. Suddenly, a young man appeared who immediately picked her up in his arms and sat her on his lap. Estefania did not understand what this all meant.